Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Good morning, Pat. Testing 1 2. Testing. 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 Testing 1 2. Testing. 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 Testing 1 2. Testing. Okay. Great. This is the hand mic. Shall I try the other mics? I can't really see the screen. Okay. Testing table mic. Testing. Testing. Testing table mic. Testing. Testing. Testing.
here. Oh, there's one. You get it?
Come on, it's.
I'm good.
Difficulty here.
I'm good.
Watch it, Dutch.
Test 1 2. Yeah, there you go. That's better. Okay. All right. Call you ready?
Yeah.
We're slow on going. We're herding cats here.
Yeah. I heard that.
There we go. Okay. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the meeting agenda for today.
I want to make
Is there a second?
I want to offer
Okay.
a motion to amend.
All right, stand by. We have a motion to amend. Is there a second to a motion to amend the agenda? All right, discussion.
The amendment I'd like to make is to include a place on the agenda for me to give it. Sorry. I want to make an amendment to include an update on the 50th anniversary committee and the activities
Any
associated
other
with
discussion?
that.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, other further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Let me make clarification. We'll put that under new business. All right. All those in favor of the motion to amend the agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, now I'll move forward with approval of the meeting agenda as amended. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the meeting agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from August 19th, the organizational meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from the August 19th organizational meeting, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the September 8th regular meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the September 8th regular meeting, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Prejudice marks. Two quick things. One is, you guys know I'm a very big advocate of the advisory committees, and I wanted to give a shout out and recognize and acknowledge the work that was done by the Marine Activities Advisory Committee. Several months ago, we asked them to look at the Whitehorse boat ramp, start to gather some information on how many cars were parked there during the day, basically just gather some data so we can get a better understanding of how that facility is being used. They and some other volunteers took on that task. They gathered the information, and they've made us a recommendation that we're going to consider for action at some point. Again, the information is just, it's relevant, but the idea that advisory committee, I think, is a very good example of how the board and the membership can get benefit from an advisory committee. They were given a task, they did the research, and they came back to us. So I just wanted to give them a shout out for the work that they did. So thank them. The other thing I wanted to mention, if you haven't heard already, the town hall meeting is scheduled for November 1st. It'll be in this room at 7:30. Now, I know there's no schedule that's going to keep everybody happy. We decided to do this one during the week this time, and we're going to make a commitment, I believe, as a group to do the next one on a Saturday. Pardon? 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, okay? If it hasn't already gone out, there's an email blast. We're actually asking for folks, if you have a question, a topic that you want to have discussed at that meeting, we ask that you send it to us so we can, number one, be aware of it. Number two, if we have to do any research to get some answers, we've got it there rather than having to tell you, okay, we'll take that under advisement, and then you'll get it at some other meeting or in some other format. So if there's any opportunity to provide that information ahead of time, that would be great, and then we can work towards that. And again, we're going to have the communications committee moderate the meeting, and it's going to be an open format. I think we're going to report on a couple of topics. We'll go through the list of questions that come in ahead of time, and then we'll open the floor up for discussion from the folks attending the meeting. Okay? That's all I got. Next item on the agenda, the announcement of email votes and motions that were done by email. Colette?
Okay, there was a motion for unanimous consent to vote by email submitted by Steve Tuttle, seconded by Frank Daly, regarding the matter of the lawsuit brought by Mr. Hill against OPA and Director Horn. And the vote was unanimous on that motion to vote by email. The motion itself was to accept the terms of the dismissal of the lawsuit by Mr. Hill. That motion was submitted by Director Tuttle, seconded by Director Daly, and all of the directors voted in favor of that. There was a motion for unanimous consent to vote by via email submitted by Director Trendick and seconded by Director Tuttle, to allow voting by email to approve the second phase of the forensic audit with focus on the Public Works Department. That motion to vote by email was passed with unanimous vote. The motion itself was to direct the forensic auditing firm Gross Mendelson and Associates PA to proceed with the Public Works Department phase of the audit. That motion passed unanimously as well.
Okay, thank you. That better? Okay. So thank you so much. So my name's Chris Heiser. I am the state's attorney-elect. I'll be taking office in January. From now until then, my whole goal is to get out to as many community functions and meetings as I possibly can, meet as many interested and proactive citizens as I possibly can, and I found that the HOA meetings are a prime target for that, especially those of you that are willing to come out on a rainy Saturday morning. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited to announce just a few of the initiatives that the State's Attorney's Office is going to be starting when I take over in January. And one of those is a more community-based prosecution model, which will mean that you'll be seeing me a lot more frequently. You'll be seeing the other prosecutors in the office a lot more frequently. We're going to have a prosecutor specially assigned to Ocean Pines. That will ensure consistency with questions from the community, issues that you're having that are more specific to this community versus other areas of the county. The state's attorney serves all of Worcester County, and as most of you probably know, that's a wide variety of communities. So Ocean Pines is very different needs-wise than, say, Pocomoke or Snow Hill. Or even Ocean City. So the idea is to have a specially assigned prosecutor that will be proactive, responsive, communicative with Ocean Pines citizens, will be present at these sort of meetings, available to you. You'll have their phone number, their cell phone number. They'll be on call to the community. So any kind of issues that you think law enforcement need to be involved in or aware of, you'll be able to access that person quite easily. I've said on the campaign trail since I began almost a year ago, there's no substitute for a face-to-face conversation with someone for you to be able to trust them. And in turn, for the prosecutors, we don't just need to know the bad guys, we need to know the good guys too. And you guys are the good guys. Hopefully. So the more information we get from the community, the better able we are to serve you. So that's the first initiative that I wanted to announce, and please spread the word among your friends and neighbors. You know, I want this administration to be the most accessible, the most transparent, and the most responsive that we've seen. I don't know how many of you know any of the prosecutors in the office, probably never seen one before. I want to change that. So, and it's not just going to be me. I can't be everywhere. So I'm asking all of the prosecutors in the office to get on board with the community prosecution model. It's worked very successfully in other jurisdictions. It's worked very successfully with police departments that already employ that. So anytime you have, your farmer's market or any of the charity events, community events, fire department, anything like that, if there's police officers there, I want our office represented as well. The second initiative that I'm really excited to announce is a Veterans Treatment Court program. That's been implemented in several counties over the bridge, and the first Lower Eastern Shore Veterans Court has been established. I was at their first meeting in July. The idea is to prioritize the needs of veterans, which that's incredibly important to me. We take care of a lot of our lesser fortunate community members, it seems, from cradle to grave. I think veterans should have a priority in that process, especially if they've fallen on hard times. I think most of us are aware, at least in the news or generally, that the VA has a lot of issues, and the presidential administration is working to resolve a lot of those. But in the meantime, veterans don't even know what sort of care they are entitled to. It's very difficult to navigate to get them the resources they deserve. And having sacrificed and served our country, that's going to be a priority of mine as well. The Veterans Court is going to serve nonviolent offenders and just make it easier for them to access the care that they've earned in service to our country. A lot of the issues are dual diagnosis, so drugs and alcohol addiction in combination with PTSD or any other sort of mental health issues make it difficult for them to get the care that they need and they deserve. So we'll be doing that as well. That's actually going to be based in Cambridge, but we are working to bring those resources down to Worcester County, and that'll be available on a federal, state, and local level to our vets. So if you know any vets that are in need, if you know any vets that have fallen onto hard times into the system, we're going to be working really hard to help them out. The next thing is public-private partnerships, which kind of goes along with the community prosecution model. The public-private partnerships I'm discussing are for the offenders that can't quite get it together. So I've been meeting with our charity organizations, with nonprofits aimed at helping the younger demographic who maybe just don't have a job, haven't quite graduated high school, can't manage to figure out how to get into Warwick Community College or which track their life is going to take, and offer them some alternatives. So, for example, I met with Worcester Youth and Family Counseling. They have a grant from Governor Hogan that's designed to assist 16 to 24-year-olds who are unemployed and not in school. And I said to the director of the charity, when I met with him, I said, well, that sounds great. Where do you find 16 to 24-year-olds that aren't in school and aren't employed? Where do you look for them? Are they in their parents' basements? Where do you find them? And he said, oh, good question. I don't know, but we have all this money and we'd like to help them out. And I said, well, I know where to find at least some of them, and that's in court. They're a captive audience. I've got them in there, 3 or 4 hours at a time. So if you can bring your resources to court and I can bring you the people that are going to benefit from your resources, let's do that. And I found that the more charities and the more nonprofits that I speak with, the more programs and the more help they have to offer, and we're just not connecting the help to the people that need it. So certainly people view stereotypically the job of a prosecutor as somebody who just sends them packing, sends them to jail. But what I think in the long run will benefit our community and our county as a whole would be to solve the problems that we can solve for the people that we don't need to see in court 10 more times. And that will cut down on the needless amount of prosecution for silly things, for kids that are just getting in trouble because they have nothing better to do. So my aim is to cut down on the total number of prosecutions through this more community-oriented approach. Finally, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I promised the board I would be brief. For lawyers, some of you know that's a little difficult, but I promise I'm keeping to it. Again, I want to be the most transparent and accessible administration that we've had in the county. To that end, I've provided my business cards, my personal cell phone number is on that, my personal email is on that. I've had that phone number forever. I promise this is not a bait and switch. It will be my phone number for the whole time that I'm in office. Please feel free to call me in the interim before I take over if you have any questions or concerns specific to Ocean Pines, countywide, anything at all, any suggestions. What I'm doing right now is just outreach so that I'm like a sponge. I want all of the information, and then we'll have a smooth rollout for some of these initiatives once we get into office and get things rolling in January. So thank you all again. Thank you, board, for having me. Thank you all for listening. And again, my contact information up here. If anybody has any questions, briefly, I guess I could answer. If not, please give me a call or shoot me an email. I'm happy to respond that way as well. Thanks so much.
Kristen, we do have one question from one of our directors here.
I have a question about the Veterans Initiative.
Yes.
I know that oftentimes what you find in these criminal situations are due to mental illness issues.
Yes.
To what extent do our law enforcement officers in this county have expertise with respect to on-site kind of crisis mental evaluation to be able to divert those cases appropriately from law enforcement to mental?
It's a great question. So a lot of our law enforcement are actually veterans. So when I roll out this program, they're going to be the first line resource to funneling the correct people into the program. We also have all of the information and pamphlets and instructions at the jail, at the detention center in Worcester County. So they're actually referring people immediately upon arrest into the program. So they get evaluated and vetted, and predeterminations are made as to eligibility as far as what the arrest was for, what crime has been committed, but then also the needs of that individual veteran. And then the great thing about the program is it's very specifically tailored to each veteran. Currently there's 6 veterans in the program, and 1 from Worcester County, and we hope to increase those numbers. And the judge who is running it out of Cambridge is completely dedicated to making sure that each of those veterans has a very specifically tailored program. They have different requirements as far as mental health, and they actually are going to be using federal VA resources to have a for lack of a better word, like a VA bus for additional information, education, and raising awareness in Worcester County, and that's going to be here once a week, usually in the Snow Hill area because it's by the courthouse, and then the veterans know that they can go for additional information to get hooked up with the resources they need through that as well.
And then as far as the non-veteran cases that are related to mental illness, do these officers have skill there as well?
Yes.
And resources? Great.
Yes, absolutely. There's competency evaluations, there's emergency petitions in place. So if they feel that someone's a harm to themselves or others, they go immediately to the hospital for an evaluation, and then we work from there as far as any criminal charges go. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you.
Kristen, very informative. Thank you very much for your time today. Next item on the meeting agenda is the Treasurer's Report. John Viola.
Talk. Can you hear me? Yes? Good. Okay, so we have the September 2018 financial results. So as we usually do, let's look at it at big picture. Financial change for the month of September. Revenue over budget, $8,000. Expenses under budget, $23,000 approximately. New capital spent around $5,000. Bottom line, for the month, pure and simple, we were favorable, $26,000. So if we look at the revenue for the month of September, actual was about $461,000, budget $453,000. There's your $8,000, and we'll get deeper into it. Yacht Club was favorable by approximately $23,000. Golf operations, unfavorable, $14,000, has been tracking favorable. A lot of it was mainly the weather for September. As you all know, we had a lot of rain. The expense variations, actual $1.1 million, budget a little more, 1.73. We're favorable to $24,000. Yacht Club, Beach Club combined, unfavorable $14,300, and I'll talk more about some items we saw on the Beach Club. It was offset by the police, favorable $14,000. You can read it, open positions, rec and parks, favorable, and they've been favorable with their wages and their expenses, $13,000. Finance, $13,000 favorable. Back up. I'm sorry. Okay. So the summary for the month of September, actual versus budget. Let's look at our departments. Fire and police, they were favorable, $31,000, favorable. Police always seem, they're right in there. Rec and parks, they've been trending, like I mentioned, favorable $12,000. They came in favorable on their camp, Ocean Pines, on their expenses, and there was some wage favorability. The amenities, our amenities. Yacht Club, it's unfavorable, $23,000. Unfavorable for September. I was told wages, promotions, there were some margins. Obviously, you have promotions, there's some margin effect, but overall, we have better margins. Yacht Club, unfavorable. Beach Club, favorable, $33,000. Timing of wages and budget, some numbers there, some reclasses. We did see on the Beach Club P&L, some people recognized it, some didn't. You saw a credit of $14,300. I don't know, it seemed odd to me. It was a reclass entry moving the fees for the management that we pay to MadOrt that were allocated between Beach Club and Yacht Club, that now there was a decision made to put it all on the Yacht Club P&L. So you saw a favorability on the Beach Club. That's why those numbers were distorted. Yes, it was accounting. I read that. It's accounting. It's not hocus pocus. It was a reclass. It's a management type of reporting. I'm sure they had a reason why they did it. Golf was unfavorable to $13,000. Revenue was the weather. Aquatics unfavorable, $8,200. And I'll talk more about aquatics, and there's a lot of good stuff there. Is Stouse here? He's not here. I don't see him. But we'll get into more that you need to know about aquatics, which will tie into what I've told you over the last couple of months, and everything will come together today. Okay. Hopefully I can see that. So let's look at our numbers year to date. Let's see where we are. Well, for the 5 months ended September 30th, the excess of revenues over expenses versus budget resulted in a favorable variance, favorable $95,000. So whatever we budgeted, right now, we're looking good. Let's go down to the bottom because I didn't change it from last month. There would have been a lot of typing. It's not my strength. Partially offset by the following. Oh, wait, somebody did change it for me, hopefully. Thank you very much. She did change it. It is a weakness. All right, so let's do that. Made it easy for me. Yacht Club, $94,000, favorable. Beach parking, $50,000. We're real good at beach parking. Golf, $28,000. Okay, so we had a rough month in September. I'm sure everybody did. The weather was just terrible. $28,000. Marina, $24,000. Look at the marina. You look at the management down there. You see what's going on. It's right on point. It's solid. And others too. But the marina, nobody focuses on it. It comes through every time, and it's more and more. We should find out what that gentleman down there is doing. Racket sports, $18,000. We're growing it. Some nice stuff there. Finance, I'm being told, $25,000 favorable. Beach club, $19,000. Fire and police, $65,000. Partially offset by aquatics, $85,000. Give me a chance to explain that, and I will. General maintenance, $47,000. IT contract services, legal fees, well, we've talked about that. I've talked about it in other months. For those that haven't been here, we had a lot of consultants in here. We're looking at software. We had some legal fees, the MediaCom. I know some board members asked me how much it was. A lot of legal fees for MediaCom. New capital, $5,000. Hopefully it's 5,000 up there. I know it looks like a lot of zeros, but $5,000. We had some night vision equipment, and there was something else for drainage. Nothing exciting there, okay? That's where we are today, year to date. Okay, here's a good one. Cash and short-term investments. Where's our cash? What's going on with our cash? Activity for the month of September. For those of you that haven't been here, the B&F committee over the year has recommended that we ladder our CDs. We laddered them to take advantage of the higher rates that hopefully are coming. So as an example of that is we have money in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and that way you can kind of average and get the favorable rates that are coming due. So we're at 2.2%. I get that question all the time. At September 30th, 2018, the association had approximately $13.5 million in cash. A lot of money? Yeah. $10 million invested in CDARS. It's good. $3.5 million in the money market and operating accounts. Our finance director has a cash forecast. It was a schedule prepared designed by B&F so that he can see every month, and he does a great job executing it. He can see what cash is needed, because obviously we don't want to invest that money for 3, 6, 9 months, especially this time of the year, when we're going to probably be utilizing cash, basically, versus bringing cash in. So to go back to my number, the $13.5 million, which you can find on the balance sheet right up top on the left, that number at this period of time usually will go down. Embedded in that number are your reserves. I don't have the schedule in front of me, and I should, but the next one has it. And I'll show you how much of that $13.5 million is for our reserves, a number that's always talked about. Fully FDIC insured. No risk. Well, about as less risk as you can go. We have an operating account for MadWatt. Directors have asked me questions on it, and rightfully so. Our assistant treasurer, Gene, will provide oversight going forward on that account. I've spoken to Gene. He's willing to do it, and we will have oversight on that. So it's an account with the money that's utilized for the yacht club. They have access to it. We get reports. We want to just make sure, like everything else we do, we have oversight. Bank of Ocean City operating account. It's where we pay our bills. There's oversight performed by B&F. It's Larry and Frank. They go in there each month. They make sure everything is signed off, prepared, date, reviewed, date, that it balances, and make sure there's nothing on there that looks out of the ordinary. They're not recreating the wheel. They're not recreating the wheel. Getting a signal there. But they're providing oversight, okay? Next slide. Okay, whoop, go back one. All right, so we saw our cash. Where is it? We know it's in operating accounts. There's your reserves. This is a number you read about, you hear about. Sometimes I'm a little confused what they're saying on it because it doesn't make sense. Let's try to make sure it makes sense to everybody today. You got $10.2 million in your reserves, bottom right corner, at the end of September. $6 million is for your replacement reserve. The beginning of the year, we had $4.6 million. Your assessments that you always hear, your funding reserves, your funding for replacement, whether it's the country club, whether it's a lawnmower, something like that. You transferred money, what they're doing, spending. We have a balance right now of $6 million. It's a good time to just bring into play about a reserve study that we're working on. We have a reserve study, a tool, I'll talk about it in the next slide. That gives us the oversight. It's a tool for us to manage this account and to make it transparent to all of you that want to see what's in there. We have meetings on it. We go through the process. I hear about that we're trying to fund Taj Mahals, that there's secret plans, that there's numbers, millions. The reserve study answers that. It tells you we don't have that. It makes it clear where we're spending the money, where we're going to spend the money in the next couple of years. Not locked in stone, but it's there for everybody to see. BNF reviewed it. I asked certain people to come in to be advisors to BNF. They did. They went through it. Whether they agreed on everything or not, that's personal opinions. There's $6 million in there. The reserve study will show you where that money is intended to be spent. Now keep in mind you have air conditioners, you have cars, you have equipment. It's going to come due just like your house. And what this reserve study shows you is when it should be replaced based upon the life of that asset. So what's coming down to, so the bulkheads, the bulkheads, let's talk bulkheads. $3 million in there. It's a lot of money to me, a lot of money to a lot of people, a lot of money to a certain board member. Last year's budget meeting, BNF addressed it. I got people like Gene, I got Larry, Marty, we're in there, giving guidance on it to us. We came forward, BNF, and said, no assessment without a viable, I'll add the word now, I said plan, but business plan. Business plan seems to be the topic. Without funding it again in the assessment, and it was funded. We did pay it. It's in there. There's $3 million in there. I'm being told, or I'm looking at our records, and approximately $1 million is scheduled to be used for bulkheads from now to the end of the year. So obviously, that's key when we come this January and we're doing the budget review. Because if nothing's done, and that $3 million is still there, and we don't have a viable plan, business plan, well, obviously, we're going to address that. That's all in the guidance from BNF to the board to the GM. I want to make that clear. Same thing like last year. We see it. We see the $3 million. But last year we were told we had to go back a year and do 2 years. We had to do the current year work and go back on the prior year because nothing was done. Well, I got to take that into account when we fund it and we do the assessment. That's going to come due again this year. We're going to scrutinize it, but trust me, your BNF team, and I believe everybody else, will look at that. We don't want it to build up, but we want to make sure we have enough to fund what we're being told we're going to do for the year, all right? Roads. I got to be honest with you. We either have the best roads in the world or these roads are ready to be washed out. I can't answer that. I really can't. I'm being told we don't need money in roads. I'm being told we need a lot of money in roads. What did we do last year? Well, the BNF committee recommended to fund depreciation in addition to the casino funds, the $300,000, the 0.3. I keep creeping over. I don't know if I'm in the way of the camera. That 0.3 is the casino funds. That's basically the money that and some other money we received from Maryland or whatever over the years. That's all we've spent on roads. We've patched them up. Some will say it did a great job, and that's what's doing it. Maybe they're right. I hope they're right. During the reserve study, we needed to know, we BNF, what is it that we need there? How much does it cost to repair a road, to redo a road, a mile of road? And we have how many, JB? 80 miles? What do we have? 80 miles. So 80 miles. I got estimates from good, concerned association members, $4 million to mill a road, from $67,000 to mill a road. For our reserve study, we're taking in that we believe the estimate would be about $167,000, $180,000 to do a mile. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see some type of business plan and something done, so then we would have the information to detail the history of what it costs to do a mile here. And then we would know better. Again, BNF, in their guidance, recommended that we fund depreciation for roads like we did last year, on the contingency that we get a viable business plan to support that. So that's what we said in September. That may not be what happens in January. Staying on the roads, I told you that last year we funded, we all funded depreciation, but you're looking at it and you don't see it. 1.7 assessments, our replacements, bulkheads, 700,000, roads is blank. So what happened there? Where's our money? Well, we funded it. We had a forensic audit. That's where the board decided to pay for, to get the money, to get the, nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong with it. That's where they decided to get the money, because it's funded, it's a cost. We want a forensic audit, it's got to pay for it. That's where we got the money. They went through all their, what I call the scrolls, and everything was done in order, and that's the money that's now in your P&L to pay for our forensic audit, okay? 10.2 million, I added a 13.5. So what's gonna happen for the rest of the year? Country Club, we're estimating we're gonna spend 500,000. May not happen. If it doesn't happen, obviously this will be adjusted. Software, 400,000. Software has been going on since the beginning of the year. Nothing's happened, but we're looking at outsourcing, right? Without looking at outsourcing, surely we're not gonna start paying or start working on software. The admin police, $50,000 for plans and what's needed. As you know, a couple years ago, there's plans to work on the admin building, and certainly the police need it. The craft building is in there. It's in your budget for $75,000. I haven't heard anything on it, but let's not forget, in that budget is $75,000. The other $275,000 I'm not going to go through now, but we certainly have the statements and everything to show you. But that's equipment that possibly needed to be bought from that. If you look in the reserve study, those are the items that are coming due. Spoken about the bulkheads. I'm being told there's a plan out there for roads for $500,000. Let's see what happens. Obviously, if it's not spent, we're not going to say assess in January. Okay? That's about it for that. Yeah, I can't take questions yet. So where are we today? Well, we have a forensic audit. We have phase two forensic audit. Might be a phase 3, I'm not sure. As I always say, BNF and your CFO is not involved in it, and rightfully so. Positive year-to-date operating fund balance of approximately $95,000. I told you that in the beginning. GM gave guidance. He's given guidance that we are in the black, that we will be in the black by the end of the fiscal year. Come April 30th, hopefully I'm standing here and we're in the black. I believe him as of now. Would like to see some forecasts calculating to the end of the year. I understand why we don't have it. Hopefully we have it for next month when I stand up here. Good stuff. Staus is in here, right? There will be a change in accounting for more consistent reporting, for more consistent reporting. So what happened was, if you go back when I talked to you July and August, we saw something, or I saw something on aquatics. Aquatics revenue was down, didn't seem right. Looked into it, something I had heard last year at the budget process that Art mentioned or whatever. It seemed different to me than what I expected. We were kind of inconsistent in how we were recording revenue. Nothing terrible, it's timing. But we're going to correct it. We're going to make it more consistent. We're going to recognize that revenue immediately in your P&L as opposed to waiting. So it's a change in accounting. We're going to recognize revenue when you go in and you buy your swipe card, when you buy your coupons. That's when we're going to recognize it. Today, the swipe cards are recognized one way and the coupons are recognized another way. The swipe cards, as soon as you're going in, you put your money in there, it hits the P&L for that month. The coupons, not so much. It's when used. It'll be easier for accounting, easier for memberships, easier for all. We make this change in accounting. Everything gets reported. Consistent and when sold, okay? I asked Steve to check it with the outside auditors so that they're not surprised when they come in here. They were fine with it. I know Steve's checking on something else that JB wants to look into. That's fine. Hopefully that's working out. What I need to tell you is this. There will be a favorable impact to aquatics in this current fiscal year. We will make it transparent. We will show you what the number is. Now, obviously, that number this year is going to take in maybe some money that was spent on those cards or put on those cards last year and the year before. Okay? Nothing uncommon. We're going to recognize it now. So that number, some of it was sold this year. So there will be some favorability using that number because of other years, but then she didn't get that money in the last 2 years. There will be a number, probably be $85,000. That's good. Forensic audit phase 2. I don't know what to tell you. I'm glad we're doing it. Investments. I mentioned it's laddered, FDIC insured, bank reconciliations timely, B&F oversight. Bank reconciliations need to be reconciled every month. They need to be signed off. They need to be approved. And any reconciling or any difference in it. When you have those controls, you have better accountability for your money. Operational loss. Let's not forget this. How much was the operational loss last year? 1.3. Round numbers for now. What about the year before? Give me a number. 0.4, 0.3. Overall number in my head, 1.6. Losses. What does that mean? We spent more than we brought in from our assessments. Right? To happen. Got to pay for it. You pay now, you pay later. Has to be paid for. In last year's budget assessment, 951, right? Embedded in there was money to start paying off that loss. For this year, that number is $600,000 rounded. So in your assessment this year, in your 951, you had to go back, not you, we, me, everybody, and go back and pay for those losses. It's the right thing to do. It's paying off $600,000. B&F has the oversight. We're making sure that that money was put there and not used for anything else. And it has. You can see it on the balance sheet. B&F reviews it. You still have $1 million to go on that. That'll be part of the budget process now. But keep in mind in that 951 that there's money in there to pay off this $1 million. Let's not forget that in that 951. B&F presented guidance to the board in September for the fiscal year 2019-2020. I mentioned that. The reserve study. The reserve study was presented to the board for October 20th meeting with the B&F guidance. There's a 4-page memo sent on behalf of B&F to the board. It should be posted on the website. The board has it with all the recommendations on the reserve study, what we saw, where we think it is, how we think it will affect the budget process. So different from prior years when we wanted to put in a number that I showed you for your reserves, really just was, we'll fund depreciation, and I heard about a slush fund that Art Carmine had, and we paid that. Now you have a reserve study that tells you how much. And it tells me what we need, whether that 1.7 you saw before on that prior schedule is good, maybe some inflation factor, whatever, but it's all spelled out for you. Obviously, it's contingent upon the work being done. If it's not done, well, then it could be a change. Our Assistant Treasurer, Gene Ringsdorf, stated, "This is one of the best budget and planning tools we produced." That's Gene's opinion. It's mine also. There was plenty of transparency with that for the board, for the membership. I know a lot of people took advantage of it. A lot of people came in as advisors, and we looked at it. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing tool. Whatever's in there now, so if there's a number in there, the $50,000 for something that you don't agree with, that hasn't happened yet for 6 months, obviously that will still be addressed. Okay, it's not locked in there. So if there's $50,000 in there for something, well, we haven't gotten to that. That's the estimate provided by the GM. That doesn't mean it's not going to change by the time that happens. Outsourcing update. I believe we received all the RFPs this week. That's the date. I did work on it. The board had tasked me, and I'm fine with it, to work on that with the GM. We did it. We got it done early, and we sent it out. We posted it. JB Michelle posted it, and was sent out to probably 13, whatever you want to call them, outsourcers or whatever, companies, plus posted. JB's has received, whoever's going to put a bid on it, he's going to put together a team. There'll probably be some members from the B&F committee, along with other people that JB will assign, to look at that outsourcing. It's big. It's important. It's maybe not now, but needs to be talked about more so everybody understands it. Okay. I don't know if I can take questions or. Yeah. Okay, so I did. Where am I? That's me. Okay, so I can take questions. Any questions, please? When I do this, just let's keep it, and it usually is constructive. Don't make it personal. Joe. You want the mic here?
2 questions. The first one is the money that was credited at the beach club. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's my question, is that impacts a potential Matt Ort bonus. Is that correct?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Reynolds, the question was regarding the move of the monies from that were assigned to the beach club earlier to the yacht club. That was the management fee. And the management fee was calculated entirely off of the amount of money that we used to pay the food and beverage manager, and all of that was always in the full amount, benefits and everything was always in just the yacht club budget. And that's how last year's budget was put together. So therefore, it should have been all in the yacht club for the get-go. Nothing from the management fee should have been related to the beach club. Again, the contract and the bonuses are all based off of that budget.
So the contract fee, if I understood you correctly, is all charged to the yacht club? Is that what
Correct.
You just said?
Correct. Because
Okay.
that's how the budget was put together, and that's where that was being paid for. in the
Okay,
budget.
thank you. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the answer. You mentioned my second question is, you mentioned that our Assistant Treasurer, Gene Ringsdorf, is going to be doing oversight of the account for the yacht club and beach club. Was anybody doing that previously?
The Director of Finance, Steve Phillips, and I, from the day one or even before the contract started, we were meeting with Matt Ort and Ralph DeAngelis from Matt Ort Companies. We did that throughout the summer, and we have access to all of their documents, board reports, everything. Sometimes we would go dive further into that than other times. We met with them about invoices on a monthly basis, and there were other things that weren't part of the operating P&L. There were capital things that all came through me to sign off on, and we got into some additional questions when we started getting into the calculation of the bonus. Nobody was really focused on that until we closed the beach club, and then we began to work on that. And so that required a little bit more digging.
Okay. Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, and I left out, so I might as well do it now. The yacht club numbers, the beach club numbers that you're looking at, when you look at the controller's report, as you know now, they include the management fee, one part of the contract. It does not include any calculated bonus that might be due to Madwater. So that would be a charge, an expense against your P&L when that time comes. I was hoping to have something by now as an estimate, but we'll have it. It's being worked on. Okay. Sir.
I may be the only person that doesn't understand this.
You need the mic. Evan.
When you're talking about last year's results, I heard the 350 mentioned again loss. Now,
last year was the 1.8.
I understand. The year before that. However, the auditors see it different. They show it as a $40,000 positive. You know why, I know why. But I don't know why we keep going back and saying we lost 350 when the auditors say we made 40. My question is, this million, if I understood you correctly, we took $600,000 and reduced the loss from last year.
Yes, sir.
So is the loss $1.2 million last year, or is the loss 650? Is that?
No, they're good questions, and I'm glad I will clear it up. So, and I'll put a slide in for this next month. Last year, just rounded, we lost $1.3 million. The year before, whether it's 300,000 or 400,000 rounded, let's use the 300,000. Marty sees it differently than me, but I'll address that. So 2 years ago, I'll address it. Might as well do it now. If I'm okay with that.
Yeah, last question, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, you stop me. The 300,000 2 years ago is what we lost, 350,000. We lost that. We lost that per our controller's report, per our scrolls. Our scrolls is easier for me to say. It's our bylaws and resolutions, which tells us how we should be reporting. And that's why your controller's report is designed the way we do it, okay? And look, I'm not gonna get in now, but I will put it, I promise, for the next one, hopefully I remember, to address why Marty's saying that, the auditor's report. I'm telling you, you had a loss of $350,000 versus budget 2 years ago. And whoever was in charge back then told you that. Last year was $1.3 million. What I talked about the 600,000, when we did the assessment last year, 951, a percentage of that money, whatever 600,000 divided by 8,442 or whatever it is, was put towards paying down that loss. Take it whatever you want. The $1.6 million, that's on your balance sheet. It's a loss. They paid off 600,000 of it. So $1.6 million rounded, 600,000. We only owe now on that loss $1 million. The loss was still last year 1.3 and 350,000 the year before. Okay? So cash paid it off. It's still what I want you all to know and remember. In that assessment number, 951 is still a piece. If we start with 951, still going to pay off that debt. Hopefully it doesn't get used for something else. But B&F is on there. Larry's on there. He's watching it. As far as what Marty's saying, obviously when you have, we say accounting, everything's accounting. Why accounting? And why are we doing this? But then we look at accounting, if it favors us, and we say, oh, accounting says. So I will address it. He's got an excellent question. I certainly owe you an explanation on how that works, and I will do that. I don't have the time today.
John, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the General Manager's Report. JB.
Morning, everyone. Good first hour. A little bit more on the reserve study. As you know, it's on today's agenda for the board to address. It's complete and dated September 5th of 2018, and the staff has already begun the process of incorporating the reserve study into the budget development process. Please note that the reserve study is a planning tool to follow on Treasurer Vola's comments. It has a lot of components item listed with estimated dates for replacement and estimated cost for replacement based on those dates. So it's not a cost for this year. If it's out in 2025, it would be an estimated cost for that particular project in that year. That's the reserve study. Lots of information, lots of things in there. It's on the website, and you're obviously welcome to come by the office and look at it as well. Again, it's a planning tool, but it does not spend a dime. Before the actual expense occurs, the capital item needs to be included in the approved budget and or approved separately by the board of directors. Furthermore, capital items require 3 bids, so the estimate in the reserve study is not the figure that is actually finally spent. Unless it is less, usually it is less and sometimes it is more. The intent of the reserve study is to make sure we have identified our capital assets, are setting aside in the financial reserve accounts enough money, as Treasurer Volo mentioned earlier, enough money to replace those assets when the time comes for doing so, and to plan such that the assessment contribution to the reserve funds is not impacted by great fluctuations from year to year. And as I said, it's on today's agenda for the board to address. The budget calendar for the development of next year's budget has been published. We're currently working with the staff and the various respective committees in working on the draft budget. The proposed budget will be provided to the Budget and Finance Committee the first week in January and will also be publicized completely to the full membership. The Budget and Finance Committee will conduct its work sessions on January 7th through 9th, followed a week later by the Board of Directors work sessions on the budget from January 14th through the 16th. There are 2 member hearings on the budget, and there are a total of 10 different opportunities for member comment on the budget throughout the entire process. That's not counting all the opportunities you have beginning when we produce the budget to be involved in the process, attending committee meetings over the next 2 or 3 months, seeing how that budget process gets developed. And you also have the opportunity to email the board, the treasurer, or the general manager, share your thoughts and your interest on the budget as we go through this entire process. The Financial Management Services RFP, the due date for that was yesterday. We are in receipt of 4 complete proposals. The entities we received proposals from are Legum & Norman, an associate company, Tidewater Property Management Incorporated, Forethought Partners, LLC, and Mrs. Mary Catherine Decker. As a result of the RFP, we also received 2 proposals for more limited consulting services, one from First Service Residential and another from BDK, our current software provider. At this point, those proposals will be reviewed by a financial team consisting of the treasurer, some members of the Budget and Finance Committee, the general manager, and the director of finance. This team will narrow the field based on a review of the proposals, conduct interviews with some of them, and provide a recommendation to the board of directors on that issue. Regarding the country club plans, the country club project, you'll like this, is like a jigsaw puzzle wrapped inside of an enigma surrounded by a Rubik's Cube. So where are we? The previous version of the RFP needed to be changed due to concerns about the project schedule that were shared with us by potential bidders. There were also concerns about the project schedule, the liquidated damages issue, the number of ad alternates, and other smaller issues. Thus, we delayed its release so we could address those concerns. We changed the RFP by eliminating the project deadlines and the language on the liquidated damages. We asked for the time of completion to be provided by the contractor in their bid proposal. We, regarding all the 11 alternates that we had, we eliminated a couple of them on the railing issue. We kept alternate 4, so it's really one of the last remaining alternates in the bid. And that is the hardy plank or vinyl siding, but we did make it around the entire building so we could have consistency of the color, etc. The other alternates, again, we added to the base bid. That was the Ipe wood decking, replacement windows, gable windows, the conduit for future work, the interior blinds, and the elevator. We also added and made changes to alternate 11, which is the roof. Architectural and engineering services by DBF are continuing and are mainly related to the roof issue at this point. They expect to be complete in the next 10 to 15 days. And based upon this and our own final review time, the following would be the new estimated timeline on the RFP. To issue the RFP on November 5th with a new deadline for proposals of November 30th. The month of December, basically taking up the time to review those proposals. And then January 5th or thereabouts, that's when the next board meeting is in January. The board will consider proceeding with a contract in an amount not to exceed and approve a total project amount. Insurance review. The insurance audit is being conducted by Manugian Insurance out of Silver Spring, Maryland. Manugian Insurance is a participating partner with the Community Associations Institute and specializes in the insurance needs of homeowners associations. They anticipate providing a report to us in early November. Their work consists of gathering information, which is all that's done, site visit, review of all the documentation in response to that, and providing a written report on their findings with recommendations. In addition to the insurance audit, and as agreed to and recommended by Manugian, we will be issuing an RFP for insurance brokerage services in the next few weeks. Just by way of other information for everybody's knowledge, association's insurance policies renew May 1st each year, and our current broker, Avery Hall, reviews those policy coverages and shops them every year. Avery Hall would get a renewal quote from the existing carrier as well as competing quotes from others. However, we have not issued a request for proposals for insurance broker services in over a decade, and that should be a business requirement once every 5 years. The timing for the shopping of the insurance policies is about 90 days before the renewal, and the broker would shop during the month of January, submitting applications from February 1st for that May 1st renewal date. So that's what's going on there. So basically, calendar activity related to insurance policies. October, we're finishing up the insurance audit and issue the RFP for insurance brokerage services. November, we'll have the audit back as well as presentations by the brokerage firms that respond to the RFP. At the December board meeting, the intent is for the board to be able to select a insurance brokerage firm. And then in December, January, February, the broker proceeds with getting information and shopping the policies, and then providing that information back to the association in the March-April time frame for a renewal date of May 1. Wildlife management. People always ask, why do you keep bringing this up? But I do it anyway. Maryland Geese Control has been on site beginning their work on Tuesday, October 9th. Again, this contract is not an annual contract. It is on an as-needed basis, and we intend to pursue it for about 6 to 7, 8 weeks this fall. At $625 a week, that means we'll spend between $4,000 to $5,000. We have only spent a little less than $5,000 year to date in a line item that we had $15,000 budgeted for. Thus, we've got a little bit more room after that expenditure, about $5,000 left for spring months. We're also researching the purchase of a waste collection attachment, a tow-behind piece of equipment that sweeps up and collects fecal waste from geese and other sources along our trails and areas that are frequented by the geese. The next meeting of the Environment and Natural Asset Committee is scheduled for this coming Wednesday, October 24th at 1 p.m. in the Administration Building Conference Room. We have several appointments to that committee before the board today. Specifically regarding the use of the Border Collies over the last couple of weeks. They've been here every day since October 9th. They've given us about a little over 20 hours. That breaks down to a cost per hour of about $31. They do the Northgate entrance ponds, the Southgate pond. They take a look at the canals, and they also explore the golf course from time to time. They have been consistently inconsistent in timing and location sequence, which is the key to that process working. We've got to interrupt the geese's comfort level, if you would. The number of geese seems to be lower. 2 weeks ago, we had over 300. This past week, the average was about 100 plus. As to whether that reduction was due to the Border Collie program, who knows? Can't really be sure of that at this time. So we'll use it for a few more weeks this fall, and we'll have some more numbers next month. The survey has been scanned and tabulated, and now the fun begins of interpreting all those results. We'll be publishing the results of the survey soon, and so everybody be on the lookout for that in a press release and other publications, as well as on the website. The leaf collection program has begun, or November 19th through December 21st. That's a combination of Ocean Mines Public Works as well as Republic Services. Leaves and other yard debris, bagged in paper bags, will be collected by Public Works November 19th through the December 21st. I won't read all of this, but I think we've already issued a press release on that. It's on the website, all the details of that collection program. We will not be picking up or allowing drops-offs on November 22nd or November 23rd for the Thanksgiving holiday. This coming Thursday, October 25th, we're going to be having a new member welcome reception for all the members who have moved in the last quarter. For those of you who moved in earlier in the year, I'm sorry, I had to start somewhere. But that's something we'll be going on once a quarter, and it's an opportunity. We'll have committee representatives there, staff, department heads will be there, a few of the board members will be there, and with an opportunity to interact and welcome new members to the community and how to get them involved and plugged in to everything Ocean Pines.
Thank you, JB. Next item on the agenda is public comments. As with each time we have public comments, please state your name and your address. The floor is open for public comments.
Larry Ferrone, is that on? 19 Clipper. Larry Perrone, 19 Clipper Court. I'm also here as a representative of the Ocean Pine Golf Members Council as the president. We're here, and a bunch of our golfers are here today to address the issue regarding comments and emails sent by Director Daly regarding the closure of the golf course based on his, what we believed is flawed analysis of the operational results of the golf course. I want to make clear that the golfing community, quite honestly, is tired of hearing the same old lines, the same old complaints that there's 50 golfers, that the golf course is here to benefit 50 people, and that the community is carrying the load for 50 people. When the reality of it is there are 160 members. That includes individual members and family members of the golf course. In addition to that, the records show that there are 1,800 households in the community that utilize the golf course. Now, Mr. Daly addressed at the Budget and Finance Committee, as well as with the Golf Advisory Committee, that based on the results from November to March, if we shut the golf course down, we would save $120,000. The CFO will tell you that if in fact that occurs, we will lose an additional $80,000. Using that train of thought, if we look at the operational results from May until, as John just recently said, $28,000 through this year, why don't we buy another golf course? For 5 months, we made $28,000. That's ridiculous. I wanted to point out also that as of September 30th, golf membership was at 94% of its budget, aquatics was at 83% of its budget, and total racket sports were at 94% of their budget. If that's all things being equal, why don't we shut them all down? Mr. Daly's analysis that he sent out through a spreadsheet to members of the Budget and Finance Committee, and I know to the Board of Directors, and also to some of the members of the community, indicate that the golf course lost about $200,000 last year, when in fact the golf course made a profit of $5,000. How can the numbers be so disparate? Well, the answer is that Mr. Daly inappropriately is adding in depreciation to operational results. As John mentioned earlier, our scrolls, as he refers to them, are not set up to account for operational results with depreciation. The other issue that is a real concern, as I mentioned earlier, is this continued attitude that the golf community hears that the golf course is there for a few. And I want to read a couple comments from Mr. Daly so that everybody understands that these are offensive comments to the golf community and probably to other members. And I quote, "We all signed up for living in an amenitized community. This means that 8,452 of us contribute to covering the fixed costs of those amenities. None of us signed up to subsidize variable costs of those amenities." Well, quite honestly, you did sign up for that. In another email, let me quote, "I think I've been very clear on my intent to bring a culture of operating excellence to Ocean Pines. Along the way, I expect situations where people will use misinformation, fear, and innuendo to preserve the status quo. And when the use of that, and it should be, and when they, instead of the, but quoting it, and when the use that to benefit the few at the cost of the many, you can expect me to confront them." A third comment, and again I quote, "Simply put, golf is next on the agenda. The operation must increase revenue and show an upward trajectory to generating net operating profit." And fourth, in a comment made to an individual involving the country club, and I paraphrase, "Why should I vote to spend $1 million on a building for a few golfers?" That's, in our mind, is offensive and disrespectful for a community that is based on amenities that recently Forbes magazine named as the best place in the state of Maryland to retire, and was previously named one of the 25 best places in the country to retire. We find it offensive. Now, originally it was our understanding that he was going to bring a motion to shut the course down from from November to March. Clearly that is not on the agenda this month, but we don't know what will happen next month. At this point, I'd like to turn over to Don McMullen to talk about the additional things that the golf community does for this community.
Thank you, Larry. My name is Don McMullen, 53 Cannon Drive. Good morning. I've been a property owner since 1972, a homeowner since the mid-'70s, and a full-time resident since 2003. I've had the pleasure of playing our golf course for 46 years. I've been a golf member for over 40 years. And I'd like to share some facts with you this morning. Did you know that the golfing community hasn't asked for anything? We've been involved in many charity tournaments this past year, as in many years. The Ravens Roost 44 Golf Scholarship Tournament raises thousands every year for local high school seniors to attend college. The Mary Mack Foundation Tournament raises thousands every year and supports many charities locally. The Taylor Bank Junior Golf Tournament raises thousands to support our junior golf program and supports many college-bound students with college scholarships. The Ocean Pines Veterans Memorial Golf Fundraiser supports the education outreach program for our fifth graders. This year we had over 550 fifth graders visit the memorial to learn about the history of the American flag, how to fold the American flag, the branches of the service, what is a POW and MIA. Our volunteers located specific bricks and pavers for these fifth graders. Current and future generations appreciate and understand the dedication and sacrifice of our veterans and the cost of freedom. The Ernie Stiles Memorial Golf Charity Tournament raises thousands for Diakonia and the Humane Society. The golfing community recently raised money for the Atlantic General Hospital Foundation, supporting the Ocean Pine Lady Golf Association Pink Lady Fund that helps provide mammograms to those who might otherwise not be able to afford one at AGH. The last charity tournament this year is the Big Brothers Big Sisters, scheduled for December 1st here at Ocean Pines. Our golf community has raised tens of thousands of dollars for charities and thousands in revenue for our golf club and the yacht club. I'd like to thank John Malinowski and his staff for assisting the golf community in each of the aforementioned tournaments. I'd like to thank the Matt Ort Group for delivering excellent service during our luncheon and dinner events supporting the different charity fundraiser events. The Ocean Pines 50th Anniversary Committee invited former Ocean Pine golf professionals, our first golf professional, Bob Haley, Hunt Crosby, Buddy Sass, and Bob Beckelman, to the golf event. Each of them thanked our golf community for their support while they were here, and they commented on the good course conditions. The golfing community volunteers in the spring and fall and assists maintenance and course cleanup. We have been closed out for many days of play this year from outside groups. We're not complaining. Our course is making money under John Malinowski's leadership. In closing, the Ocean Pines golf community continues to support this amenity. Thank you.
Format as a public comment. Format as a public comment. You can make a public comment.
I would like to make a public comment. First, with regards to the second speaker and the charity events, thank you for your service to the community. And I want to make it clear that when we get into the factual discussion, which will now follow, that in no way is it intended to in any way take away from the good of the charitable events sponsored by the Golf Association. Let's talk about some facts, okay, not fantasies, okay? As a member of the banking and finance community, Larry is, or banking and finance committee, Larry is, budget committee, Larry is intimately familiar with the financial details of the association. He quotes a $5,000 profit. What he left out of that is for the first time since 2009, last year the financial statements were changed. The change took Turns Grill, which was in combined golf operations, and made it a separate entity. When you put the Turns Grill financial results into last year's operating results, golf lost $31,225. That's from our audited financial statements. It is what it is. Let's don't spin it any different for any other reason. For the past 2 years, earlier, John Viola mentioned that we have to address a $1.6 million net operating deficit. Golf contributed to that net operating deficit approximately $250,000. That shows up in your assessment. This is a fact, not a fantasy. The other thing, in terms of, and since Larry quoted some emails, I will stand by every quote there except the last one. From day one, minute one, when I campaigned to run for this board, I supported the clubhouse renovation. You're looking at one upset puppy that since I've lived here in 2013, that second floor has been uninhabitable by human beings. I fully supported it. I intend to support it in the future. Second, regarding a motion to close the golf course, that is absolute total lie. Okay, here is what exactly was said in the context of it, and I will give you the exact numbers so we can move forward factually this year. During the months of November through March, the golf course brings in a revenue of $173,552. That is from your audited financial statements. Okay, during that same time period, the expenses for running the combined golf operation is $292,464. It is a net loss of $118,912. My comment was, and this was it exactly, when you look at those numbers, and when you're looking at shutting down the country club for a major renovation, and you look at the addition of the expenses to keep it open during that time period, a better business decision would be to shut it down for that time period, not permanently in the winter, for that time period. Immediately, two things happened. Mr. John Bailey and John Viola, our controllers, said, Frank, that is a terrible decision for the association. And it is a terrible decision for the association because we have contractual obligations to lifetime and full-time members, we have ongoing maintenance, and the competitive courses in this area do the same thing. I fully accept their reasoning. It is logical and it is good for the best of the association. Anything else is pure BS and innuendo, okay? Now, to some other facts, since Larry quoted emails. He's starting a little campaign of fear that, oh, if we made our net operating profit in our amenities, the whole world of our amenities would collapse. Well, let me give you some facts, again, from the audited financial statements that he happens to deal with. For the past 5 years, okay, 3 of our major 6 for pay amenities have shown a net operating profit, okay? In fact, that's on average for 5 years running. Last year, there was an aberration. The Beach Club, which had constantly made profit, lost money. Even though it lost money, for a 5-year average, it was profitable. And last year, Racket Sports and Aquatics joined the party with a net operating profit, which means of our 6 major for pay amenities, there's only 2 that don't make money, the Yacht Club and golf, okay? Last year, a general manager came in, he looked at a broken budget, he looked at a dumpster fire in food and beverage, he made some dramatic changes that changed the management of the food and beverage operation. I have said for the record, okay, and I will repeat it again, there has been a dramatic turnaround. Not including this month's financials, the turnaround was a positive $540,000, okay? Pretty good. They're in a marathon, not a sprint. They have said, I believe publicly in an article in the last Progress, they don't know if the Yacht Club will make a net operational profit this year. Guess what? Neither do I, because they're running it. But the turnaround has been dramatic. That's why golf is up next, because we can show that we can get customer service and we can get net operating results in our amenities, and all of them have to do it. And that's what the plan is for this upcoming budget. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
No, hold on.
Since I was called a liar, I would like to address the issue.
Hold on. What I'm not going to allow is this to devolve into a personal tete-a-tete going back and forth. I appreciate that. I'd also appreciate if you take it offline. You guys can talk about some of the things. Yes, there's some discussion on factual versus fantasy. I don't want to use public comments to do that right now. If there's some additional comments and conversation has to happen, I'd ask that you take it offline with the parties involved.
I'd just like to point out that Turner's Grill operation last year was run by the Yacht Club.
Yeah.
It's not run by
Right.
golf operation. So you want to talk about fantasy?
Yeah.
Frank's response is fantasy.
Okay. All right. Other public comments? Yeah. Let's come up. John, you want to make a public comment? Yeah. All right, hold on.
My name is Sharon Santacroce, and I'm at 23 Wharf Court. I didn't plan on speaking, but I just have 3 comments. I think it's interesting, it's my first board meeting, I've met a few of you, that we're talking about golf, and your next agenda item is capital purchases request, golf triplex mower. I think that's interesting, since it looks like they're looking towards an investment. I'd also like to address Mr. Bailey with the wildlife management. I think that's important to discuss, and I wouldn't try to minimize it by saying, why are we continuing to discuss it? I think that's important, maybe not to all, but to a few of us. And then Mr. Yay, yay wildlife management. Mr. Parks, I don't know if the members are allowed to actually have a copy of Mr. Bailey's employment contract, but if that's available to residents, I would like to see it. And that's all I have to say. Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Joan Viola, 1 Montclair Court. Lifetime membership card, cost a lot of money. With it came an assurance that the golf course would be maintained properly. I checked the contract, it's in there. But that's not why I'm up. If we're gonna take numbers, first of all, the last time I looked, we had a controller, we have a GM, and now we have a CFO. They present the financial statements for Ocean Pines and information. If we're going to start having the board sending out emails with attachments with numbers from all over the place, it's not for me. I never had something like that, and unfortunately now I have to stand up to refute what a director's saying, and I didn't want to do that. I really didn't. If you're going to send out schedules, if you're going to take schedules from years ago that somebody sent you, basically an old page from an old playbook, that Ocean Pines has been down before, and when we were down there, it was okay. That person did a lot of work, prepared those schedules, showed these losses, showed depreciation and all that, and we addressed it. I tried to address it today. The golf course last year, per our scrolls, $5,000. Turns Grill lost money, but I have presented that over and over again for a year. It's pure and simple. Turns Grill last year was taken away from golf and put under food and beverage. Now you want to couple it with golf because it had a loss of $40,000. Let me tell you something. Turns Grill hurt your golf operations last year. If you knew anything about it, and if you listened to our golf pro, we lost money in golf because of Turns Grill. I witnessed it. I witnessed packages coming down from New Jersey, Philadelphia, wherever. When they went into Turns Grill, they couldn't get service. And I heard them say, we are never coming back here again. Turns Grill was not under golf. I didn't make that decision. I report it. Now it's back under golf, and we'll put it back with golf. So, you know, you could twist it. You want to put it there, so be it. The bottom line is it was taken away from golf. It was not managed properly. We're paying some professionals to tell us that when we can tell it ourselves. I've asked that you don't do that you don't couple it, you are. Then you take a step back, depreciation, fine. You talk about golf numbers, you add depreciation. Okay? I've asked you not to do it. The scrolls say not to do it. You have the right, do it. But then you turn around with the yacht club numbers, and you give numbers that are favorable, and you don't include depreciation. Other numbers, and you don't include depreciation. I got to be honest with you. This is a lot of work. I don't need to deal with that. These people who are working hard don't need to deal with that. Okay? I'm trying to make it transparent. I'm trying to explain it. I will explain it. Good question back there from Marty on why do you, and I'll do all that. But if we're going to have somebody running around sending out emails with attachments to confuse people, it's more work for me, it's more work for that gentleman, and it reflects on all of you. All of you. It's not going to reflect on me. It's fine. We'll present the depreciation, whatever. It's there. It's there. You say the yacht club is turning around, and it is, thank God. Golf is turning around, but you're not saying that. It lost hundreds of thousands of years ago. Why? Why don't you tell why instead of just putting numbers out there? Why did it lose that money? Did you see what the golf course, what we let it look like somebody sprayed Agent Orange on it? I bought, I still can't believe it, I bought a lifetime membership. Might as well make that, I couldn't believe what I was planning on. And then that clubhouse, you have to be kidding me. And then you're going to blame it. It's turned around more than the yacht club. It's turned around, and you're refusing to listen to it. Hey, somebody made a mistake. They came into B&F. They said we could save $120,000 if we shut the place down for 5 months. That's a fact. I didn't want to come up here and say it, and I wasn't even saying it. That's a fact. You told me. We can shut it down. Your financials from November to March shows that we lost $120,000. We shut it down. We saved the money. It's a fact. I heard it. Many people heard it. Dennis Hudson heard it. Dennis Hudson, I think, wanted to come back, and he jumped back on a plane and went back to Florida when he heard it. You said it. I didn't want to come up here and say this. You twisted it. Okay. You did listen. Everything you're saying now makes sense to me. It's good. We're net operating, whatever. We're going to have business plans, all that. Fine. Fine. Okay? You don't save $120,000. If your P&L say you lost it during that period, if you shut it down, you're not going to have the revenue. And I'm not even talking about giving the money back to the members. If you had done a calculation to see what it was, you wouldn't have told me we would have saved $120,000. We're going to lose more money than $120,000 if you shut it down. And we went through this with the yacht club years ago. I read it on the forum that we'd probably lose money if we shut it down. Everybody wanted to shut it down. That's fine. That's a decision. But at least put the right numbers out there if you close it down. You want to close it down? Close it down. Give these people the right numbers.
Other public comments?
Yes, good morning. Larry Davies, 58 Windjammer Road, and I also sit on the Gulf Advisory Committee. So I'm going to choose not to rehash the events of the past week. Everyone has more than enough information to draw their own conclusions about the matters regarding the golf course and the amenities. My first comment, and this is going to kind of coattail on what we just said, regarding this situation is that I'm more confused how one board member could produce such a plan as Frank did without realizing the potential reaction from the golf community. Was this plan not vetted by all board members? I have to guess not, because I want to believe that at least someone on the board would have realized just how this idea would have invoked a passionate negative reaction from the golfing community, as well as not pass the smell test financially. And if this plan was not vetted, why not? Is it standard procedure for any board member to pass along his or her own ideas to our committee systems whenever they want to without full board review? It wouldn't seem appropriate, and it certainly doesn't seem like good business sense. The Golf Advisory Committee has put all of the issues that have been debated the past week and more on the table at the September 25th meeting. The minutes will reflect that. We as a committee have chosen to be involved, and I believe have made it clear to John Bailey and John Malinowski that we need our concerns heard and addressed. The committee is focused on course conditions, customer service, and improving Turns food service. In the current year's budget, the board of directors cut $40,000 out of the labor. That's at $10 an hour, that's 4,000 man hours that weren't available this past year to address maintenance issues on the course. So we've been trying to do more with less. Currently, our course is in substandard condition. Any discussions to increase membership and even outside play is mute if we don't immediately have a plan to correct the damage to our greens, address reseeding our rough areas with a different type of grass, and eradicating the crabgrass that has invaded the course. Most golfers don't drive up to a club and care about the clubhouse roof line or grill capabilities. They care about the challenge of the course layout as well as playing on a well-maintained course, especially if they're paying the high fees that this area demands. Our standard should be Eagles Landing. That's a Muni, and fundamentally, we're a Muni as well, too. That course is always in great shape, has a modest clubhouse and grill facility, but it is always recognized as one of the best courses in the area to play. Through all of this, there are some positives that I take out of this anyway. One, we know where Frank Daly stands regarding OP golfing community and amenities. Two, I believe we will soon see who supports him on the board. Three, this has brought out a great deal of passion from the golfing community, and that's a good thing. But we need your continued support to drive the needed maintenance improvements to the course. To that end, there's a golf advisory meeting this coming Friday, the 26th at 10 a.m. I invite anybody to come. Finally, to the board of directors, you face many challenges in accepting your roles and responsibilities as board members. Golf is but one of many. Previous board of directors have not served the community well and have left the association with more problems than they solve. My question to you, are you going to be part of the solution or part of the ongoing problem, sir? Thank you.
Other public comments?
Pardon?
Other public comments?
Thank you. Name is Nelson Fenwick, 12 Whaler Lane. Can you hear me? Okay, good. 10 years ago, my wife and I were looking for a second home and a place to retire. We looked all the way up into Delaware, far over to Easton, down to the Virginia border. We settled on Ocean Pines. There was a reason for it. My knees will never play tennis or pickleball again. I don't own a dog, so the dog park is not something that interests me. And I'm too old to take up skateboarding. But I do enjoy golf, and my wife loves the beach club. It's because of the amenities that I paid a premium for my house. And so the amenities are important, not just the paying amenities, all of them. And I'm happy to support all of them with my my money, my assessment. Thank you. Even the ones I don't use. However, let's not be penny wise and pound foolish when we're looking at the amenities. Because, I'm sorry, without the amenities, this isn't a community. Without the amenities, this is just a housing development. Thank you.
Other public comments?
My name is Olaf Osveen, 12th Road guy. I'm not here talking about the golf course. I'm talking about the road. You people are talking you're going to resurface the road. I'm a bicycle rider, and I'll be approached by some people. When I ride the bicycle from the south gate of Steen's house, there's 60 patches in the road. I count them every time. When I do something in my house, I want to put a pole, I want to cut a tree, I have to go to the office. I have to pay $35 to get a permit. Why did you people are not a little bit more concerned if these people dig a hole and stands and put that cold spot, what they call it, that they make the road right? You know, you people ask us a lot of money. The road costs a lot of money. I want to ask you people if you keep a little bit more your eye on it. Unfortunately, my bike rider, and you know, I call it the hell of the north. There's a certain bicycle in Europe, you go like this. That is what the Ocean Pine Parkway is. That's all I got to say.
Other public comments?
Hi, my name is Laura Whitaker. I live at 20 Easton Avenue, and I want to talk about the Canada geese, but I'm not going to say very much because I came in late, so I don't know what y'all have already discussed about it. I wasn't going to say anything until I heard a comment that kind of, from a previous speaker, that led me to believe that Mr. Bailey was trying to minimize discussion of the issue, and I don't want that to happen. I think it's really important, and a lot of us do. I recently attended a meeting with some concerned citizens. Mr. Bailey was there, Mr. Tuttle was there. It got a little emotional, because it is, for those of us who love the geese, because they're a part of the Eastern Shore culture. But one of the things that I've read since then on the Ocean Pines Forum and other places has really upset me, and that's the violence. Like, people are talking about, you know, getting their rifles, shooting the geese and cooking them for dinner, and it's upsetting. And at the meeting, one of the members or people there said to Mr. Bailey, what would your children say about 300 geese being slaughtered? And he said, my son's a hunter, and shrugged his shoulders. So that was, to me, someone in charge of the situation who obviously has, I mean, from that, I take, he's in favor of shooting the geese. It's upsetting to me, and I just wanted to voice that. Thank you.
Other public comments?
I was going to keep my mouth shut, but my name's Harry Rutter, 60 Nottingham Lane. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Daly for representing 7,000 of the 8,400 people that live in Ocean Pines that don't play golf. Now, I'm not against the golf course. I seriously question that we should be spending a couple $1 million on a caddy shack, but, you know, I'm not gonna go on that. But I think it's wrong for you people to come here and jump on a man that's trying to do a job. I was on the board of directors of Lake Linganore 30 years ago. I know what it's like to sit up there, and I appreciate every one of you because you got to put up with this crap all the time. For them to take Mr. Daly and bounce on him because he had the guts to say something, you know, you people are something. You know, and while we're at it, let's talk about the geese. I grew up on a farm. Now, I'm on the poor side of Ocean Pines, and I know you all think that we suck the money out of you, although I can't remember $1 million being spent on anything in Section 10 of the covenant of this community. We have one recreational facility, one little park. It's got a gravel road to it. It's got a swing set, one basketball net, and no place for the kids to pee. And you're talking about spending $1 million on something that I heard a figure of 150 permanent members of the club and 1,800 of the 8,400 residents of this community using the club, and you're spending millions of dollars on it, and you can't put an outhouse over there for the kids to use in the place that has 1,297 homes in it. Okay, I'm talking about Section 10 now because I live there and I haven't figured out all the rest of them yet. But you got 1,297 homes. I hear you saying you're going to do away with maintaining the drainage system and maintaining the sides of the roads. And I have noticed, now being an old farm boy, it kind of cracks me up that you people buy mowers that are designed to do a golf course and then try to mow trenches with them. That's a goodie. I'm just going to sit down. You know, thank you, Mr. Daly.
Other public comments? I'm going to finish.
Joe Reynolds, 84 Watertown Road. I don't have anything quite so controversial. Our treasurer mentioned $35,000 for Mediacom contract legal fees, one item. It's a topic I brought up in the past. The board is going to be coming up into budget time. I would strongly urge the board of directors to seriously add a new position of permanent legal counsel on the payroll. We spend more on outside counsel than Worcester County pays for a full-time attorney. We're paying $35,000 to look at one contract. Worcester County hires a full-time attorney for about $110,000 for a year. So I think you should seriously look at that. With regard to the roads, I spoke to John Ross, who manages the sewage treatment plant over at, in Ocean Pines. And there are apparently many, many road cuts that have been done recently and more coming up due to the purchase back around 1989 or so of some water piping that was not up to specification, and it's all breaking. That's why you have a preponderance of these cuts all over the place where they're patching up water lines with breaks. Ocean Pines, and I never heard this board mention it, but there is a Ocean Pines Water and Wastewater Advisory Group that I believe still meets created by the county commissioner that still meets over at the storage plant on a monthly basis. I don't even know who our representative on that board is now, if it's still managing, still running. I think it is. But at any rate, my point is somebody needs to talk to John Ross and find out what's going on with these road patches and the frequency of the need for road cuts, because it would be really a bad thing to do to go out there and start paving Ocean Parkway and have the county just continue cutting these roads up as soon as we patch it again. So I think we ought to coordinate it with them. Thank you very much.
Other public comments?
Hi, my name's Joe Leshka. I'm at 110 Pine Forest. I've been here for about almost 20 years part-time and now 3 years full-time. And what I find most desirable at this area is the amenities within the community. And it bothers me to read, whether it's foolhardy, rumor, or whatever, that the immediate solution is always shut it down, close it down. I'd like to see this community maintain itself. I don't have a boat, but I like seeing boat ramps everywhere. It's a beach community. I love the beach. I utilize the beach club, always have. Happen to play golf, I apologize. And I enjoy that. And I'm a new grandfather, and I hope, since I live over in that area, maybe one day I'll be able to utilize the playgrounds. I don't have a dog, but when my kids do come, they bring their dogs. I like it all. And I like the crabbing pier. And I hope you think about putting it back exactly where it is. It was there. People made a decision to buy around it, maybe or maybe not. But to willy-nilly say things are breaking down, let's take it, let's put it over here, it destroys the continuity of the community that you bought. I appreciate that you just try to do your best to maintain what we have. I think it's a damn good thing. I think it's been set up well. I enjoy it. And I think there are a lot of people that enjoy it as well. And the conversations around takeaway, don't do a daggone thing to improve anyone's impression of anyone. So I think it's important to keep positive, keep the community, and maintain what we have. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Name's Richard Clemens, 61 White Sail Circle. Changing the subject, curiosity, what are you doing with the bulkhead staging? Make a comment. Okay, past practice, people complain to you, and probably only a small percentage of this board actually served at the time when some of the issues evolved down at Swim and Racket Club. Okay, but observation, it was a good staging area when it was created. Okay, but it's never been created properly. Okay, it was a construction site. Okay, and it should have been separated to make it safe and secure. Okay, you spent a lot of money creating it. When it transitioned, okay, from the area down where the boat ramp is currently, okay? That was probably the better delivery site, even though it caused somebody a lot of transport time, okay? But the things to be considered is, no matter where you put it, okay, you gotta make it secure, you gotta make it safe, okay? And you talk about adding additional monies into the project. I think one of the most recent comments was about $25,000, okay, to make it possible for the plan to work for the current repair areas, okay? The essence is, okay, people wouldn't have complained about it, okay, if it was properly screened, fenced, made secure, okay? They got kids, okay, they got noise, and actually construction site, okay, with heavy equipment, okay, probably sounds like the kitchen when, something's gone wrong, okay, because all the backup alarms on everything, okay? It's very annoying, okay, but it doesn't happen 100% of the day. But if you're going to annoy somebody with the look of it, okay, the stress of, you know, worrying about somebody getting hurt, okay, it just, you know, something for you to consider, okay? Do it right if you're going to do it. And the building code requires it, okay? But there's a complacency, okay, in this area for construction, okay, separation and security, because nobody wants to spend, okay, all of it, okay, when they can get away with not doing it at all, okay? Don't be part of the problem, okay? A question: what is the current plan on material place and objectives, okay? The 1970 design, okay, isn't going to survive, okay, in the future. And if you're going to spend money to repair it and replace it, use the information available, okay, in the studies from, you know, the different scientific communities that are doing it for you, okay, coastal bays, okay, the NOAA information, okay. Statistically, we're 7 to 10 inches of loss since the bulkhead was first put in, okay? And you send contracts out to people and say, like-kind replacement, okay? Okay, similarity, okay? But if you have losses, you should raise it, okay? What is in the plan for the upcoming bulkhead replacement? Where do we get that information? How do we access it, okay?
Attorney, public comments and discussion. That information will be posted on the website when it's available and made available to all the membership.
Okay, thank you.
Other public comments? I have one. Doug Park, 16 Sailors Way. I think with all issues, I think it's hopefully I'm stating the obvious, but in any issue, golf or any other issue that's upon us, the opinion of any single director does not necessarily represent the opinion of the entire board, all right, just to kind of level set things. But with regard to golf, let me share a note that I sent to my colleagues here to try to hopefully get us back to at least, you know, considering a good way to move forward. Now, let's take a step back for a moment, refrain from the back and forth posturing on the issue. Nothing is accomplished by the rhetoric. I'd rather spend time and energy getting input from all involved on how best to position golf operations to minimize financial losses. Closing the golf course at any point in time will not yield positive variances to the bottom line and is not a viable option. Analysis of existing operations, comparison to previous year's financial results, adjustments to the marketing effort, and other traditional business tactics are the things that we should focus on in an effort to ensure golf operations are run as efficiently as reasonably possible. Let's take the discussion forward in a professional manner with the intent of resolving the issue as best we can. Okay? That was the note that I sent to everybody, and that's what I believe in. There's a lot of passion about it, okay? There's a lot of ideas out there. When I was running for the board years ago, I made a comment, there's a lot of intellectual capital out there in Ocean Pines. We should be leveraging it. The comments and the passion associated with this particular issue are evidence that that feeling and that intellectual capital is available, it's alive and well. Let's leverage it, all right? Certainly take a position on the issue. But if we're just going to go back and forth with the he said, she said, I did, you not, you know what? I personally don't want to spend time and energy on that approach, all right? We've got a plethora of opinions. We've got a litany of people that have a particular approach they want to. Let's leverage it. Let's move forward and figure out a way to get to the point where we can have an amenity, this particular fee-based amenity, run in a way that is reasonable with regard to M02, which says we have to run our amenities in a business-like fashion. We've got the opportunity to do that, and without pointing fingers, I think we can accomplish that if we put our heads to it. Other public comments? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda, capital purchase requests. JB.
The item you have before you is for the purchase of a triplex mower. It's a mower that's specifically set up to do tees. It's replacing a similar mower that's a little over 10 years old. The bids came in at $25,600, $31,800, and $41,500. The amount that we have budgeted for it is $35,000. So the recommendation is to purchase it from Textron Golf Jacobson. This, of course, is coming from our superintendent of golf, Andre Jordan. Just as a reminder, we've purchased some other mowers in the past. Some of the board members have had an opportunity to tour certain facilities, including golf maintenance. By the way, board members, we're going to do some more of those tours. But it was advantageous to some of them to see how many different types of mowers we have and how they're set up for different purposes. And that sometimes gets lost on the general public, not particularly if one doesn't play golf, between greens and tees and rough and fairway and surrounds all require different levels of mowing and different types of equipment. So anyway, this is the triplex mower, getting it from Textron Golf. Budget amount was $35,000. The bid that we're going with is from Textron at $25,658.91.
I'll entertain a motion to purchase the mower as recommended by our GM.
I'd move to accept the
Is there a
bid.
second? Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to accept the purchase of the triplex mower from the GM, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That is it for capital purchase requests. Next item on the agenda, CPI violations. JB?
We have three before the board this month. The first one is one Maid Marion Lane. This is regarding generally an unkept lot regarding the declaration section 8L. And it's recommended to be sent for the attorney for follow-up action.
Please. I'll entertain a motion to find the individual in continuing violation of CPI.
I'd move to find the member in continuing violation and refer the matter to council.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. Next item.
The next property is 21 Rabbit Run Lane. There was an alteration, a restoration, conversion of the enclosed screen porch to actually enclosed with windows. Those alterations require permits both from the county and Ocean Pines. Those have not been received or requested yet. So they've gone through all the mailings, and it's recommended to be sent to the attorney for follow-up.
I'll entertain a motion to find the individual in continuing violation.
I'd move to find the member in continuing violation and refer the matter to council.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item.
The third property today is 71 Nottingham Lane. This is for general maintenance regarding the declaration section 8L with unsightly mold and mildew on the siding and roof. Being recommended to send to the council for follow-up action.
I'll entertain a motion to find a continuing violation.
I'd move to find the member in continuing violation and refer the matter to council.
Is there a second? Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of finding the particular property continuing violation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That finishes the CPI violations portion of the meeting. Now we move into unfinished business. There's a second reading of a number of items. Esther? Yeah, so the protocol is you're going to introduce the motion.
Okay.
We're going to second it, and then I'll suspend.
Okay, motion for second reading of resolutions 01 through 08, and then 011, 13, and 15.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay. As part of the discussion, I'm going to suspend Robert's Rules of Order and ask Marty Clark on the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee to be available for questions as we move into the discussion phase of this particular motion. Marty? So Marty, do you want to present anything, or do you want us to go through each item? And I guess I ask our directors, you want to go through each one of the items as we have them listed here, make sure we understand the changes that are included in the second reading, and then if we have any questions, we refer them to Marty? Is that preferable?
My position on this, since there are so many resolutions we are looking at, if there has been no material change between the version from the first reading and the second reading, if everybody else is okay, we should just.
There's only 2 changes.
Okay,
it's
if you
small
can highlight
changes.
those,
Sure.
and then we can just do this all at once.
Here we go.
That would be my.
All right, housekeeping, most of the C resolutions for the matter, almost all of our resolutions were approved by the membership, approved our new bylaws on August the 8th, 2008, or the board made changes to our corporate charter on April 24th, 2013, as the articles of amendment and third reinstatement. Because of the changes to these 2 driving documents, most of the authorities cited in our existing resolutions are no longer applicable. As an example, the authority might have stated Article 3rd of the chapter, after which the change of the charter, that particular article was no longer applicable. So the Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee has recommended making these kinds of references more generic based on the previous example of the resolution, now states just the charter. These housekeeping changes have absolutely no effect on the intent or meaning of any of the resolutions. All changes have passed first reading without comment and have been posted on the OPA website for 2 months for membership comment. Number 2, board direction. All of the changes are at the direction of the Board of Directors and seek to eliminate any direct interaction between Advisory Committee and OPA staff other than what is allowed by the bylaws. The new wording still allows for a committee to request assistance from staff, but through the proper chain of command. By that, the board is saying that these requests need to come from the committee liaison to the board and then to the general manager on direction from the board president. That's it.
All right, other discussion? So if I understand it correctly, there's been no real material change between the first reading and the second reading?
Correct.
All right. And I'll ask my colleagues, are we comfortable in since it actually has been submitted as a single motion with a number of different parts, are we comfortable in accepting the changes in total as a single resolution, and we can memorialize it as a single motion with all the different pieces to it? Everybody
Yes.
okay with that?
Yes.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the second reading on all of the resolutions listed in the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item under
Doug, just as a point of order, we just voted to approve the second reading. I think now we need a motion to approve, adopt the changes as recommended by Director Diller.
Slow down, thank you.
Sure.
Could you bring that up as an, well, actually, technically, this is where, because, so to explain, Director Trendick's right. The issue here is when we publish an agenda, the only time we can change that agenda is at the very beginning of the meeting when we vote to adopt the agenda. So while you're absolutely correct, I would say, we don't want to follow, we want to remove protocol for Robert's Rules of Order.
Let me clarify that, and maybe Joe Reynolds, since you suspended Robert's rules, can validate if I'm correct or not. But I believe the director can bring a motion any time prior or during the meeting, as long as the director puts the motion forward to state that he or she intends to bring such motion forward. So I think if we do it that way, we are okay if we do it right now. But you're basically looking at 2 motions. Motion to introduce a motion, so we have to vote on approving that motion, and then a motion that passes the.
Yeah. We would do it under new
That sounds
business,
good.
but again, protocol, because you're absolutely right, but that has to happen at the beginning. The one thing we need to clarify is, can it happen after
Anytime during the meeting.
agenda was approved?
Anytime during the
All right.
meeting, but that's where you need 2
All right, well, I'll tell you
motions.
what, I'll take one for the team. If we have violated Robert's Rules of Order and any kind of protocol, I will take full responsibility, okay? So
Good,
Slobodan,
it's your
would you?
fault, Doug.
Yeah, so Slobodan, would you bring that up in new business? Thank you.
I
Okay.
will.
Next item under unfinished business, a motion for bulkhead replacement. Ted?
Here we go.
The motion is to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract for the next phase of the bulkhead replacement program in an amount not to exceed $621,390 to be funded from the Bulkhead Reserve Fund. Get a second first.
Second.
Purpose and effect. This allows the next phase of bulkhead replacement to proceed in areas that are scheduled and have been or will shortly be permitted. Background. This bid is based on not using the Swim and Racket Club as a staging area. The current contractor was the low bidder not using the staging area. However, they are still in the process of completing over 900 linear feet of bulkhead replacement. Further additional bulkhead replacement and/or repair will be bid this fiscal year as permitting allows, and multiple contractors will be needed to complete the aggressive goal of bringing the bulkhead replacement plan back on schedule.
Motion's been seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item under the agenda is a motion for road striping. Ted?
Motion is to authorize. Hang on a second. The motion is to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Straight Line Striping LLC for line striping of Ocean Parkway and Castle Road in the amount not to exceed $24,494 funded out of the operating fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Purpose and effect, execute approved budget work. Background, the approved budget included $40,250 in the Public Works Operating Department budget for the line item roads and bridges, repair and maintenance. OPA Public Works will edge the roadway prior to painting.
Other discussion. Colette?
Is that going to include striping that crosswalk that everybody's been
Just
talking
going to
about?
add that. Yes, ma'am. That's in there.
Crosswalk at Cathell and I'm sorry, at
Crosswalk at
Ocean Parkway.
Manklin Creek and Ocean Parkway,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. All right. Discussion. Slow it on.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I do have really a question and a comment to make about striping the parkway. I like the association member that made a comment earlier about the road conditions. I happen to be a biker also. I don't golf, I bicycle. And I know what he's talking about when he's talking about potholes and patches on the parkway and many other roads, including my own road. So with regard to this project, how are we going to be striping a parkway when we have so many basically unattended patches yet? Is this somehow going to be, coordinated with the county? Are we going to ask them to finish patching all of these areas that are, an issue on the parkway before striping? So, it does look somewhat decent. That's really my only, kind of a thought on this. I would love to see the county, and I know they do a pretty good job in trying to take care of the patches and put a blacktop back on. But there are a number of them that have not been addressed yet.
That have settled and,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
since they did that.
And I just hate to see the equipment going and striping the parkway and over the patches that haven't been done, and then they come a month later and patch it, and it's going to look pretty silly.
Right. Well, we will try to coordinate with the county, but I don't know that they know where they're going to cut next as far as.
They haven't even patched yet.
Right.
It's just soft top, no blacktop
So-
is there yet.
Right. Agreed.
You know what I mean?
understand that. Right.
David, I had a question. If we were to move forward with this, where's the timing? In other words, how soon can they start the project? Is there any kind of delay? Are we waiting 60 days before they get going? Did they give you any indication?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Layfield on that question.
Straight line, both companies have stated they can strike even when the weather gets cold, so it'll be according to their schedule as we decide whether or not to award it. But yeah, there will be a delay. I don't know the specific time frame, 1 month, 2 months, but as soon as we get the go-ahead, they'll put us on the schedule, but they did not say they would be shut down.
Okay.
Yeah, the weather didn't affect them like pavement does.
Ted?
I think short term, we need to do it because we have no control over the county going forward. We need to get that crosswalk in and everything. But I do think that, and I think it's been discussed, part of the issue on any road paving problem we do, and I mean, my court's got a 35-foot swath that's been dug up 2 months ago and still hasn't been patched, so I have to listen to my neighbors about it. But I do think we need to find out from the county and whether it's in the, whether this organization still exists, this committee or not, but we do need to find out what their long-term plan is, because it seems crazy to dig up 30 feet, then 7 months later dig up another 20. Is it better off, we need to find out where we are and get them to fix areas so that when we pave, it's done. And the other thing we have to talk about, and this goes to the bike riders, is when we go to do major roads, and this is down the road a little bit and not for this motion specifically, but do we want to widen the road to make sure that we've got wide enough areas to be able to ride a bike in a 5-foot wide area along Ocean Parkway, which is an extremely dangerous road in some areas? So.
Other discussion?
Yeah, John, is there any reason why we can't get with the county to get a timeline and a kind of a plan of what they're doing and when they're doing it?
We talk to them frequently, but we talk with, we interact with the county, both public works and roads and planning and zoning, et cetera, a lot. And so Kevin will take this and we'll go back with the county and see if we can't get something more definitive from them.
Okay.
I have a request to suspend Robert's rules to take a question from the audience. Any problem with that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Reynolds?
Not a question, Doug, but some years ago.
Microphone.
This board wasn't around at the time, but some years ago, there was an agreement with the Worcester County Sanitary Commission that if they were delayed in patching areas, that Ocean Pines could go in and do it and send the county a bill. That is still in effect. So if there are any serious areas that are troubling, I would again contact the county and verify that that agreement's still in effect. We can go and patch it, send them a bill. Doesn't mean that we don't pay for it, because we pay them at the Sanitary Commission anyway, so we still pay for it.
JB, would you follow up on that, please? Thank you. All right, I'm going to reinstate Robert's Rules of Order. So any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda, motion for removal of the existing crab pier. Ted?
To authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Fish and Marine Construction for the removal of the existing crab pier at White Horse Sanctuary in an amount not to exceed $17,500 to be funded from the General Replacement Reserve Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion.
Purpose and effect, this will allow demolition of the existing pier while retaining the right to replace the existing pier for the next 12 months. Background, this is the next step in addressing the crab pier issue in White Tail Sanctuary.
Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we have under unfinished business, we'll move into the new business section. First item, discussion, budget guidance acceptance. That's mine. In essence, under Resolution F02, the Budget and Finance Committee is obligated to present us budget guidance for the budget preparation process as we move into the new fiscal year. I wanted to take time to formally accept it and in public, so that the membership knows that we have indeed been presented the budget guidance and have read through it, and want to just basically make sure that everybody's aware that the Budget and Finance Committee did do their obligation under F02. Anybody want to add to that?
Is that a motion?
No, it's just a discussion. We're formally recognizing that the Budget and Finance Committee did what they needed to do in conjunction with F02. Colette.
I just want to thank them for all the work they did on this. It's a really good, comprehensive document.
Thank you, Gene. All right. Unless there's any other discussion, then we'll just please record that in the minutes that we formally accepted the budget guidance from the Budget and Finance Committee. We'll move to the next item, discussion on board budget goals. Frank.
Okay. The topic is budget goals for the upcoming fiscal year. The statement behind it is the purpose of this discussion is to determine the budget goals for the upcoming fiscal year. The background. The board has received guidance from the Banking and Finance Committee regarding
budget.
I'm sorry. Regarding the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. The board has also received a detailed schedule from the GM regarding the budget development process. The purpose of this discussion is to define the budget goals from the board in a timely manner to the operations team and CFO.
All right, so thank you, Frank. So when we were passing emails back and forth about how we wanted to approach this, there were several ideas on basically presenting maybe individually the things that we contributed to that document or the questions that we had about it. Do you guys still want to approach it in that fashion, or do you want to do it in another manner? Well, now, I will say that we could turn this into a very long-winded discussion.
Right.
Okay? But I think it's important that we socialize this information publicly so that people know what went into the thinking. Now, also, be advised to the membership that this is merely a discussion so that people understand some of the areas that are relevant to the opinion of each individual director on areas that they're focused on, okay? It's not a motion, it's not guidance, it's not a directive, it's just areas that we will probably consider focusing on during the budget development process, and who knows, based as those discussions progress, we may change. We may find a piece of information that we didn't have at that point in time, and therefore, we might want to look at a different approach on that. So I just think maybe we just touch on some of the highlights. Would that be appropriate for you guys, so everybody kind of understands where our particular focus areas are?
I think we're fine with that.
Frank, you want to lead us off?
No, I was going to say, this Senate suggestion that you read and, not discuss what you want to add into it, but certainly I can lead off if that's the request.
All right, go ahead.
The very first item that I have for budget guidance would be a recommended change in the guidance, and that's any departmental revenue or expense increase or decrease of 2.5% instead of 5 has to be identified and has to have a cause for justification. And the reason I put that in is the anticipated rate of inflation is less than 2.5%, and I want to make sure that we have the budget as tight as possible as part of our fiscal responsibility to the membership. The second item I put in there is to develop a salary increase pool not to exceed 2.5% of the total full-time employee actual payroll cost for 2018 and 19 to provide for merit-based pay increases during the upcoming fiscal year. I know this has been an issue in the past, so what I want to see in front of the whole committee at this time and in front of the board is what the salaries were, adjust them for upcoming inflation, set a merit pool so that that's provided for and that's clearly identifiable and transparent to all the members. The third item I put in is I want to see a full business plan for golf operations developed by the GM and Director of Golf that accounts for both the negative impacts of the construction and the positive impact on revenue growth when completed, with measurable supporting detail on activities planned to increase net operating profit. Shouldn't be a surprise. I would also like to see a full business plan for each fee-based amenity developed by the GM and Director, Department Head, with measurable supporting detail on the activities planned to increase net operating profit. As a side thing, we talked about deferred maintenance. We're planning on addressing deferred maintenance, and what I'd like to see is a deferred maintenance schedule prepared by each department with supporting details so we can attack that issue that has dogged the community for a while. Then the final item that I put in there is for budget goals, performance for pay amenities. We have had considerable discussion, not only today, but over the years that I've lived in the community on where an amenity or what is an amenity, and this is what I'd like to propose as a standard that this board adopt moving forward in our budget process. The minimum standard for all for pay amenities should be a positive net operating profit and a satisfactory customer service rating, 2.5 on a 5.0 scale. The desired standard for pay amenities is year-to-year increases in net operating profit and a customer service rating of 4.0 greater on a 5.0 scale. Operations will recommend how to develop the customer service rating.
Thanks, Frank. Slobodan, you want to start sharing yours?
Okay. I reviewed most of the comments made by Frank and other directors, and I think a lot has been covered with a lot of those individual views. One of the things that caught my attention, sorry, I'm trying to get used to my reading glasses. One of the things that caught my attention is Director Daly's bringing the subject of business plan. And I basically took that to the next level and tried to recommend to the board that we not focus only on a fee-paying amenities. So what I introduced was a language that I shared with my colleagues, which states the following, that each department head would develop a business plan with the guidance of the general manager. I envision these business plans to include things like information on current responsibilities or commitment of the department, a SWOT analysis of the department. A SWOT being acronym, for those of you that don't know what it stands for, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Analysis of previous year's performance. Review of historical information on income and expenses. Create a financial forecast. Determine specific departmental goals and initiatives. Align department plan with broader business strategy. Draft tactical plan and proposed budget, resources, timescales, etc. For each department's budget and priorities should fit in with those of the entire organization. Then the next step leads to combining these individual department plans into a single strategy document for the entire association. This would enable each department to work towards the overall goal of the whole organization. I believe these department-level business plans will pinpoint areas of success as well as areas of inefficiencies, which in turn will identify opportunities for operational and organizational improvements. So, in essence, pretty much I played off of what Frank suggested in a context of a business plan, but I really focused on department-level business plans, and that's what I wanted to introduce to the board as we go forward into the budget planning process.
Thanks. Colette?
Yeah, my comments also kind of build on or react to what's already been introduced, as well as some of what other people will be saying. Resolution MO2 states that all amenities shall be operated in a business-like manner, and that fee-based amenities should be managed to cover at a minimum operating costs through fees and operating revenues, and that operating costs not covered by fees shall be covered by using a portion of the annual assessment. There's nothing in our governing documents that speak to profit. And so I'm a little concerned about the idea of having net operating profit being a driving factor in the budgeting. What I would like us to focus on is every effort being made to build a budget that's driven by economic efficiency, customer satisfaction, and best practices in the operations of all services and amenities. Customer satisfaction is the big question mark for me. How do we measure that? How do we get a baseline on that? I don't think we have a baseline against which to compare next year's performance. So I'm a little concerned about that being, you know, a metric that we're going to be holding somebody to. And the other concern I have about that is if you do come up with a metric, I think there are huge measurement issues related to the validity and reliability of the results that you get when you gather that information. The research on surveys and satisfaction surveys indicate that people are much more likely to complete surveys to convey dissatisfaction than satisfaction. And so I think we're going to have to be very careful about how we gather that baseline information and how we use performance information to measure that. So that's a concern. Let's see the other. I think that pretty much. I guess the other issue that I have is that there has been talk of reducing the budget by 2.5%. I think that was your suggestion, Director Trendek. And I'm just curious as to where that figure comes from. What's the economic indicator on which you base that recommendation?
Well, I'm glad you asked. And let me, for the purpose of transparency and sharing with the membership, let me just read the draft goal that I have basically proposed to my colleagues for consideration, and this will be a budget goal. Make sure no, it's wrong glasses.
Oh, boy.
Proposed budget goal for the board to consider and adopt. Goal: the general manager's 2019-20 budget shall include targeted cuts by identifying cost savings opportunities that will result in reduction of the operating budget by at least 2.5% while maintaining an acceptable level of services. A careful and thorough assessment of the operations and costs may result in a need to undergo major restructuring reorganization. If such need for restructuring is in fact confirmed, we will in essence be moving from the realm of budgeting to that of a strategic planning. I was basically trying, I know I've been asked by other directors this question, where is this saving coming from? And I was trying to really stay away from how. I was trying to stay away from the operational discussion because we as a board really shouldn't be doing that. My take on this is the board needs to set some targets. Last year, as you know, I called for a 5% cut across the board. This year, I'm calling for 2.5% targeted cuts. So I think I'm being pretty modest in setting a certain a threshold. I believe the numbers are out there. The opportunities for savings are out there. If the general manager would like some guidance as to where to look, I'll be happy to share those. But I would prefer that, in my experience, I would prefer that this kind of a search for savings and improvements in our operational efficiency comes bottom up from the department level heads and feed up to the GM and then to the board. So that I would like to leave it at that for now and just get everybody's reaction on what I'm proposing. I'd like to hear from other directors as well.
Colette, you have anything else?
It didn't really answer my question, but I guess I'll get an answer down the road. The only other thing is the issue of salaries. There's been some discussion here of having a cap on salary increase. I want us to bear in mind that we're looking at an entire compensation package, that we have a tight employment market, and we are competing with the surrounding communities for talent. And I want to make sure that we're looking at the big picture here, that we're setting up an entire compensation package, not just salaries, that put us in a positive competitive position there.
Okay, I had a number of comments and so on. So in section 5, there was say there's should be a review of benefits and employee perks completed in comparison to surrounding communities. And one of the comments was, remember last year we reduced benefits to put them more in line with industry standards, which I think was the right thing to do. But coupled with the above, we need to consider how best to level set salaries to possibly offset the reduction in benefits and how potential salary changes affect the budget. The consideration is staff retention. All right, so that we got to comment on that. Frank had mentioned the 2.5% salary pool. I agree with that, but we also need to take into consideration any changes to salary that would take staff to a level commensurate with comparable jobs in the area. So, if 2.5%, maybe that's a good number, maybe it's not, but certainly we need to focus on, if we're doing any kind of level set with comparable jobs, we need to do that. There was another comment in here from the Budget and Finance Committee. It said the budget for Turns Grill should reflect historic performance and consider any negative impact. And this was a question more than anything else. I think I already know the answer to that, but if there's any thought about moving the food and beverage operation to MOC, it's got to be fully vetted first, because I think we've got some data, unless something's or I misinterpreted, that says the Turns Grill should remain under golf operations. One of the things that Frank's always talked about is the NOP, the net operating profit, and now we talked about M02. I mentioned it earlier, but I can't support the idea of that NOP as the driving factor. I think it's a consideration, And I think we really need to do, I'd replace "not" with the language in MO2, and that is in a business-like manner, all right? Because we don't have anything profit. I think it's a guideline. It certainly needs to be addressed as far as a business plan goes, but to be the ultimate driver for how we run our amenities, I would be less in support of that as an absolute. So, and also as a 501c4, as we start developing those kinds of things, we put ourselves in jeopardy from a tax perspective. If the next audit comes in and they start saying, well, guys, you now changed from an amenity-based environment that's running under MO2 with this nebulous statement that says business-like manner to specifically stating net operating profit, all right? And I don't know if that's, I'd want the attorneys and the auditors to weigh in on that as well, because that's certainly something a consideration. There's another one in here that, we're talking about the police department, okay? That provide detail of expenses and any revenue, and there's been turnover in department. I think we're down one officer, JB, if that's correct. I think we need to give consideration as to whether or not we're going to replace that officer. Again, that's another area that we've talked about tangentially with regard to staff retention. So there may need to be some adjustments in salary, again, commensurate with other operations in the area. And then you were talking about, and Frank, and I would agree with this, the deferred maintenance, all right, is clearly another issue. And my point is we need to consider how maintenance costs will affect the assessment. So in other words, what are we adding to the assessment by doing the deferred maintenance? Now, I will go on record. I'm a big fan of doing the maintenance. We need to do that because it's either pay me now or pay me later. But we've got to be very careful about how we fund that assessment and where we get it from, especially if we're looking at, I almost feel like if we're asking to consider a 2.5% decrease in our spending, and at the same time we're talking about deferred maintenance, I think they're mutually exclusive. So we need to sort of socialize that a little bit more. I added a comment about determining how the additional costs of not having a staging area for the bulkhead is going to affect the assessments for the bulkhead folks. We have to take that into consideration. We're talking about capital planning, and this is not a knock on anything, because I'll take personal blame for this. Sometimes I use the term we move at a glacial pace on things. So when we're talking about capital expenditures, we have to take into consideration the ability to deliver that, expend those funds and deliver that project within that fiscal year. All right, so maybe less is more. We want to do 4 things, maybe based on scheduling, staff resources, and funding, we do 2 of them, something along those lines. I added a couple of other items with regard to determine the costs associated with changes to the operational environment with regard to the outsourcing components. In other words, if outsourcing goes through, how's that going to affect the budget? All right, and if it doesn't, then we need to account for expenses associated with the possibility of upgrading the technology environment, both software and hardware. Although it's going to be funded from the reserves, there's going to be ancillary costs considered in the operational budget as we do the implementation. So, those are other things that we just, from my perspective, that we have to make sure of that we include in the budget. So, Steve.
Thanks. I took a more generic approach, I guess. From my perspective, I'd like to see us keep the assessment where it's at or reduce it if at all possible. So that was really my primary goal. I do believe that MO2 makes it pretty clear how our amenities should operate. I think it gives a lot of guidance as to how various departments or amenities should function. I guess my question is, do they actually follow MO2? Which gets back to some of what Frank's concern is. So I'm not a supporter of a net operating profit kind of concept. I am very supportive of our amenities being run efficiently and effectively, and I think each one of them should have a business plan that shows how they're going to operate in a business manner. So those are really my main comments.
Esther.
Not to be repetitive, I mean, a lot of the stuff we're all agreeing upon. My big thing is really having the department heads be involved in this process, in identifying what they feel. The best way to have your departments run is to have the people who are running it buy into it. It's easier to have your managers be part of planning and to implement this. I found this in business that it's easier than saying, here's the plan, make it work. So by bringing them in and holding them accountable to what they're projecting, and you reward the accountability as too. I'm not saying it should be one way or the other, but I think that's the biggest thing I want to focus on is really getting the department heads involved in their individual departments, what they expect, the goals, the profitability, and holding them accountable to it and really making them be more of a player in this game.
Ted?
I added several things. One, to the extent possible, be a plan or projection that reflects any additional expense or income we can expect on the upgrade and full marketing of the second floor of the Beach Club. Under legal expenses, provide us a detailed board breakdown of fiscal years 2016-17 and 17-18, which were both unusual years. Again, to go to a public comment to determine which direction we want to go going forward. That OPA should meet and negotiate with the OPVFD to make the recommended changes to the MOU prior to the budget adoption. I understand that's underway right now. That we have the general manager provide a specific plan to address drainage issues to the extent possible in OPA, and the plan can include in-house or contracted labor, equipment, and material. Under the capital budget, will be detailed with, under new capital, will be detailed with appropriate dollar estimates and justifications. Carryover of new capital from the previous fiscal year shall be identified with the amount approved, the amount expended, and the amount remaining. Carry forward uncompleted new capital expense will be needed to add into the fiscal year 19-20 budget. So in other words, if we said we were going to spend $1 million and we spent $600,000, we should show $400,000 not spent in our budget, but we need to budget in this next budget the next $400,000. There's no like carry forward there. You need to address it each year. General reserve capital expense based on the reserve study, which should be adjusted to remove any items no longer needed or not to be replaced, accelerating any items not scheduled but requiring replacement, examine all items scheduled to validate the need to replace or move back, and identify the amount for each item. Under roads and bridges, develop a plan to start work in fiscal year 2019-20 and fund the reserves in accord with the final BNF recommendations. And I think John's talked about needing to see a plan, and I'm going with that. Based on the 2018-19 projected results, provide the board with a 3 or 4 year plan to eliminate all prior year losses. And the reason I'm looking at 3 or 4 in order to avoid any major increase in assessments is because if we do it over 3 or 4 years, there will be money built into this current assessment that will allow us to address some of the deferred maintenance and some of the other stuff if you look at it. If we were giving ourselves, if we were putting in $600,000 to pay back and we only owe $1 million and we say, hey, we're going to do it 4 years at $250, there leaves $350 in there under the current assessment setup that we can use to address drainage, we can use to address this. So when we think about it, we need to think strategically about how do we reduce that debt, but at the same time, and keep assessments, whatever they may be, but not avoid going back and attacking the maintenance over a period of time. So that was the reason behind that. Capital planning issues, I think some of the things that I'd like to see addressed are culverts and underroad piping owned by OPA and in failing condition. We have major problems on a lot of culverts going underneath Ocean Pines. If you start talking, I don't know what section 1 was, it was some huge amount of piping under roads that are our responsibility, and we're not putting anything in reserves for it. So we need to have a plan to move forward with that going forward as well. Repair the one tennis court surface and fence at Swim and Racket Club. Include, with justification, cost to expand sports core pool, adding the room for parties, training, and meeting under new capital. Include the cost in here if we're not going to use Swim and Racket as a staging area to restore that area and clean that area up for bulkheads. Include the cost scope of changes to the Beach Club and Yacht Club based on the Matt Ork Company. Address the cost and scope of adding whatever we're going to add for a second floor kitchen at the Country Club, which would be out of reserves. Include the replacement of the cart barn at the Country Club, and examine the Swim and Racket Club to require what upgrades are needed and include the scope and estimated costs.
All right, so the intent there of just presenting to the public all the things that we've collectively been thinking about, again, by no means is this any kind of final determination, but just for, again, publicly socializing, these are the topics we will be carrying through as we discuss the budget and all our budget prep. So let's close it up. Slobodan, you can have the final comment.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a final comment, and this is really related to what Ted just brought up about addressing a deficit issue over a period of 3 or 4 years, and I think John Viola brought it up in his earlier Treasury presentation. I really have a question. I would like, especially for the general manager and our treasurer, really to educate the board on what are the best business practices when it comes to dealing with the deficit. Because there are different mindsets out there in the marketplace. Do you basically pay it down, fund it fully over a period of time? Do you carry a certain amount of forward? Because obviously, whatever we decide to do has implications on how we're going to basically decide on the annual assessments. So the mindset that I'm hearing right now is that we're going to pay this down to a zero. And for the sake of transparency, I would like to know whether that is actually a best business practice, because we know there are municipalities out there that carry deficit forward because it's what they decide to do in hopes maybe they will generate surpluses in upcoming years. So if we're going with the approach that I heard today, I would just like a little more discussion on this so the membership is fully aware of why we decided to do this. Is it a best business practice, or is it just a board's opinion or management opinion, with support from the Budget and Finance Committee and our Chief Financial Officer? Thanks.
Yeah. And again, these are just sort of comments and opinions, but yeah, I think we don't need to do it today, but that's certainly something that as we discuss it, that we keep in mind. Okay. Well, then I'm going to close the discussion on the board budget goals and move into the next item. It's a motion for the reserve study recommendation. That one is mine. Motion to approve the reserve study as recommended by the Budget and Finance Committee. The motion will serve to formally accept the reserve study dated September 5th, 2018 as recommended by the Budget and Finance Committee.
Second.
All right. Background information. Well, I'll move into discussion. Background information. The Budget and Finance Committee has completed its work with the General Manager on the reserve study and is ready to recommend that the board formally move to receive and utilize the reserve study dated September 5th, 2018. The Budget and Finance Committee recommends that the board direct the General Manager to utilize the reserve study in the development of the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. Furthermore, the B&F Committee recommends the General Manager to bring forward to the Board for consideration of funding in the current fiscal year any reserve study items that have been identified to be done this year that are currently not addressed in the budget, on the condition B&F receives a summary of any items that the GM deems necessary with proper rationale. Other discussion? Colette.
I just have a procedural question. This applies to the fiscal year 2019-20. This is a document that theoretically should carry forward. Are we going to revisit this question every year as far as using it as budget guidance, or how do we want to deal with that?
I think it's a good point. I think it's board prerogative. So, for example, we've created the reserve study, right? Now, unless our asset base changes significantly, the reserve study has a fairly, long shelf life. As a matter of fact, I think the reserve study goes out to 2037, maybe even further. So,
be updating the reserve study,
yeah.
though, every so
But
often anyway.
right. So significantly. But as the asset base changes, it'll update the reserve study. So I think it's probably prudent for us to do it, or for a board to do it every year, just to formally recognize that, because if any changes were made to the reserve study based on your change in your assets, then obviously you'd want to recognize that and say, we're not using the previous one, we're using the most current version of the reserve study.
Yeah,
Ted?
I would also say the other thing that ends up happening is inflation changes, cost of construction changes, and those numbers are calculated in looking forward out so many years. So not only will there be some assets that we decide not to replace, and they'll come completely out of there, which will kind of, if we put money away, help us that way, and there will be others that we add in that start to be reserved for over a period of time. So I think it's something that we should be looking at every year, and Budget and Finance should be looking at, because it is the planning tool we're going to use.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, in fact, as Gene said, it's the best thing that's happened in a long time. If we incorporate the reserve study updated with business plans from each department, built from the bottom up, okay, and incorporated in our budgeting process, we're going a long way toward achieving a strategic plan. And, to me, whether we adopt as a strategy or net operating profit or MO2, hey, have at it when we get and incorporate all that with the deferred maintenance, because at the end of the day, with 4 of 6 amenities right now making a net operating profit, they comply with MO2. We have to work our business plans for the ones that we feel were best practices are more applicable that are not complying with MO2, and then we will be set. And we've set the foundation for running the place on a best practices, well-organized manner.
Other discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda, motion to the employee handbook. That's mine. Move that we accept the employee handbook recommendations. The motion will serve to formally accept the recommended updates to the employee handbook as presented by the general manager. Is there a second? All right, move into discussion. Background. In accordance with Section 9.02, subsection C, the bylaws, the GM is required to maintain personnel policy manuals and make recommendations to the board regarding any updates. The proposed updates have been reviewed by the board. Other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to thank Nate Dowdy for his work on this. This is long overdue and excellent, very thorough analysis and rewrite on this. And for the board for their careful review of it as well and the feedback they gave. I think it's an excellent piece of work.
Other discussion? Slobodan.
Thanks, Doug. I am not ready to support this motion. I shared with you my observations after I took another look at it yesterday. There are several areas which I believe this board should take the time to consider before adopting the handbook. According to our resolution, the actual employee handbook is to be approved by the general manager. But the current version that's shared with us, I believe, requires a further thinking on the board's part, and for that reason, I cannot support the motion and the handbook in its current version.
I agree with that.
Other discussion?
I would like to have further conversation with my fellow board members on some of the issues in the handbook. I'm not ready to vote on it either. Sorry. Say it again.
Yeah.
I said I'm not ready to vote on it either. I want to have further conversation with the board.
Ted?
My position is this: most of the concerns are over benefits and perks, for instance, vacation, all of that stuff. Adopting this today does not limit us when we go through the budget process and look at all of those things from coming back and saying, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So the real question boils down to this: do we need the other parts in terms of employee grievance, in terms of all of that part to act right now? Nothing says that you can't come back in 2 months and say we're changing the page of how many holidays we get and things like that. I'm more worried about the other parts, which are the deep parts on legal operations. So in terms of benefits and everything else like that, we can come back at any point and change those. And I think we have to look at those in context, what Colette mentioned earlier, of the big picture of what we're doing, because we do know that we want to go back and look at the employee portion of the family part of that. So I think the benefit part, whether it's holidays, vacation, that kind, carry forwards, et cetera, like that, can all be adjusted throughout the budget process. I'm a little worried that a lot of work was done to get the legal part of us in terms of grievances and other things like that we've had problems with in the past in place. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we can come back and acknowledge it right here. Yeah. So.
Just
Just
hold on. My comment. Look at the summary. It's an 8-page summary of all the changes that were made. Okay, I'd hate to take this opportunity and squander it, because of a couple of items on the benefit. As Ted said, I think, and I'll make up a number, 97% of it, is we need it. We're talking about 3% with regard to benefits that can certainly be adjusted. And quite frankly, we're not going to be in a position because once we have the budget discussions, that may force those changes. It might dictate that those changes need to be made. So I'd hate to squander an opportunity to accept the recommendations from the GM on this employee handbook knowing full well that we could change it later on as dictated by our budget discussion. So I'm in full support of accepting it right now, knowing that we have the option to change if needed going forward.
Can we accept it with what you're saying, not to interrupt, but
No,
can we
that's-
accept it, but we have further conversation on benefits and issues like that?
You can propose a friendly amendment, but,
Okay.
Colette, you were next.
I
Frank.
just want to reiterate how important it is to get this thing approved in terms of protecting the association legally and protecting our employees. And I agree fully with Ted and Doug's position that we can revisit some of the details of the benefits through the budget process and other discussions. This came up before. Why at the 11th hour are we talking again about these benefits issues?
Frank, you were next.
Yeah. My position on it is I would support your position on moving forward because of the legalities, with a caveat that certainly Esther felt comfortable that we could come back and discuss it, because there are certain things, it was a remarkable job, okay, but there are certain things and certain information in there that I think requires further discussion, and it basically boils down to the salary, the benefits, the perks, and the competitive nature. And I hear morale talked about a lot, okay? And I think we have to factor that into discussion with some other data that we have as a board as part of the budget process. But with that understanding, I would support approving it with a caveat that we're gonna come back in those sections and answer and address those specific issues in detail.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I support adopting this today. I don't think adopting it is going to limit us as far as talking about some of the issues that have been concerned. I spent about 2.5 hours sitting with Nate and going through this manual line by line by line. And I think he's done an outstanding job of putting it together. I think our employees deserve it. It's time they had it. And I think it also really will help with some of the morale issues in our association.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have the benefit of doing what you did, which actually is a surprise to me to hear this. Now, let me make it perfectly clear. I have already said it in writing that I applaud Nate for doing an excellent job, and basically, what is a considerable project to freshen up the handbook that required a lot of work. However, based on my background, and I would also like to hear Esther's opinion on this as a small business owner, when companies rewrite an entire handbook, usually they run it by few employees. They have them read it, and I'm talking about hourly employees that are blue-collar workers as well as department heads, just to see how much information is understood and digested. We have a book that's now 60 pages long. I've seen a lot of contracts. There's a lot of language in that book that is less everyday English and very, very much legal in nature. So the books that I've seen in the past are 20, 30 pages long. Ours is 60. So I am okay with going forward to adopt it today, but I have really a concern with areas that I feel have a financial implications on the association, number one, and number two, I really do find the language in a book pretty complex, and we're going to ask every employee to sign that book, and will they? And I don't mean to undermine their knowledge and their education, but some of it is pretty heavy language, and I just want. And you're a small business owner, I'd just like to know what your take is on this, because that is mine.
All right, comment on a couple of things. I think Nate did a great job, but as a director, I will come back at the 11th hour and I'll ask a question if I feel it's relevant to me. So I'm not trying to insult anybody, but that's my job. I'll share a real quick story. As a small business owner, I had an issue with an employee with my employee handbook, and the thing that got me caught up legally was it was too complicated, quote unquote, for my employee to understand and dissect the language that I had in there. I understood it, but my employee did not. Nothing against this handbook. It is very complex. The KISS system applies to the average employee. And if they have a grievance against you and they can prove that it was beyond their understanding, we will lose. Hands down. I have no problem adopting the handbook with a friendly amendment to further talk about the benefits, the salaries, the benefits, everything during the budget process. But my bigger concern is this handbook really going to serve the employee, and are the employees truly going to be able to understand it? Because I have a guess that they're not, based on, unfortunately, my experience, okay? And I lost, by the way, because of my handbook. So we reduced my handbook, for my companies, down to 10 pages. We had to do all the legal stuff that's in here. We have all the legal stuff in ours too. Grievances, sexual harassment, everything you need to have in your handbook, but we kept everything else very simple so that the employees can understand, bottom line, of how this is legally going to be interpreted. So it's nothing against Nate, and I know this, I don't envy him because I've done these handbooks and it's a pain in the butt, all right? And I don't envy him for having to do this, but this is a reality, and this does have to be addressed, or we're going to be back, you're going to have that time where an employee is going to come at us, and we're going to have an issue. That's it.
Well, I'd second her change to keep us moving. But let me say this, as a small employer and having primarily laborers working for me, many who did not speak English, we did ours in both languages. But what we did to overcome, and really what you're talking about is the legalese in here, okay? And remember, this employee handbook also goes into things like driving vehicles, Ocean Pines vehicles, and all kinds of other things that go into it. So the guide is much more than what it might be for me as a construction, where I might just hand out the driving thing to my superintendents and not to everybody. The way we got, I hate to use the word around, but the way we addressed it was to come out with a much shorter document as an appendix in there, how you deal with this, that was, for lack of a better phrase, I'm not going to use a phrasing, it was kind of simplified, okay, into something that everybody could understand, and if you had a question, referred you to the person to get more thing, which covered us for the part of, hey, this is to there, but legally, everything referred back to the handbook. So you had all of the legal part in there to cover yourself, but here's how you get down to that employee.
Yeah, that sounds very much like a quick reference guide. You know, it's really what you're talking about, a summary, and then you have the addendum as the entire detail and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, if it's a matter of format, where you're extracting the highlights for, you know, a better understanding of the policies, not necessarily the intricacies involved in that, I think that's very reasonable. Maybe a format change, you know, might suffice. I don't know, I think we discussed. Colette?
I like that idea. Would the employee sign the complicated version or the simplified version?
Actually, they should sign both.
Both.
My
Okay.
experience, yeah. My experience, and then as you make changes to, I'm sorry. No. As you make changes, you know, this book doesn't have to be rewritten every year. So what we do every December, we sit with my attorney, my HR person, and we might change page 17, page 21. They put it in their book, but they always have to sign every year. They acknowledge the changes. It might even be a mid-year change, but that's how you keep compliant with how you do this. Yeah, going forward, you heard my amendment, my friendly amendment, and there we go. Let's keep going.
So, in the interest of protocol, all right.
Just one final thing. Would you be intending to add to your friendly amendment a simplified guide, companion guide that would be developed at a later date as well?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, state your friendly amendment for the record.
Okay. Friendly amendment to accept the handbook as it is with the revisions to, I'm sorry, we're looking at the benefits, the simplified version in future.
And additional discussion is necessary.
Yes.
And I'm going to read for you. And additional discussion is necessary.
Can't you just say it?
All right. Is there a second to? I will accept the friendly amendment. So the way the motion's reading now is that as presented with a friendly amendment that basically says we will go back and simplify the environment, create a companion / quick reference guide, and address any other financial needs there. So I'll accept the motion. I'm sorry. I accept the motion. We close the discussion on the friendly amendment and vote on the friendly amendment. All those in favor of the friendly amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Reduce it to writing.
Huh?
You have to reduce it to writing under Robert's rules. The amendment must be read.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Let's get it now. Joe's right. Got to follow. I thank you. So, let me read,
Regurgitate.
I didn't take notes. Okay. I'm gonna go on the fly. So, the friendly amendment, and you can help me this. Yeah. All right. Let's get this right. So, friendly amendment is that we commit.
Commit to the handbook, but with future discussion on benefits and a simplified version. I think that sums it up. Simplified version of the handbook.
How about if we say the future on benefits and any other relevant information, so we don't just limit ourselves to that.
Okay.
All right,
And then
the simplified version.
simplification, yes.
Does that sound?
So we commit to the handbook with a later to-be-developed, simplified,
Benefits and other pertinent issues, and a simplified version of the handbook. Summary.
And I think you mentioned discuss the benefits, review the benefits during the budgeting process. I think that was your original amendment.
I think that just is, it's inferred that we have to do that. I don't think the motion needs to carry that right now. That's our responsibility to, based on the motion which has been stated. Okay.
Can I read this?
Yes, read this one more time so that we follow the proper protocol. No,
The
that's,
motion is to commit to the handbook. The motion is to commit to the handbook with a later to-be-developed benefits section and other pertinent issues, and a simplified companion version of the handbook.
all right. Is there a second to that motion? All right. In the interest of time, because I'm missing my grandson's 4th birthday party, I'll call the question on the friendly amendment. All those in favor of the friendly amendment as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, the original motion will be reread as the original, I'm sorry, the original motion as amended. All right, I'll close discussion on that and call the question. All those in favor of the original motion as amended by the friendly amendment, please signify by saying.
Second at first.
Yes, seconded.
All right, now.
Okay. All right.
Aye.
All those, yeah, well, see, we've been going
We've been at
since
this
since
since
7:30 this morning, so we're starting to fall apart. All right, so, all those in favor, aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, and then we have one final item under new business that was added when we adjusted amended the agenda, and that is the 50th anniversary follow-up. Colette.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. I just want to remind everybody that the outstanding 50th anniversary activities are the gala, which will be on Saturday, November 10th at the Yacht Club, 5:30 to 11:30. Cocktails, dinner, dancing, surprises. There's still tickets to be bought, so encourage people who have not bought them to buy them. It sounds like it's going to be a good time. Then there will be a sock hop on December 14th, 6 to 10 p.m. at the gym here in the community center with food in the Assateague room. Details are still being fleshed out, so more to follow on that. And then the other thing I want you to be aware of is that they started sales of Christmas ornaments, commemorative Christmas ornaments. These purchase forms can be obtained in the craft shop. So that covers that. Thanks.
Okay. Any discussion? Thank you, Colette. All right, that's the end of new business. Moving into the final item on the agenda.
Motion to accept the second readings.
Oh, right, yeah, that's you. I'm sorry. Wow. Go ahead. Slobodan, please, go ahead.
First of all, just in accordance with the resolution B04, agenda development for board meetings. Additions, board members may request additional motion or topic be added after the 7th day or at the meeting in progress by making a motion to do so. So I make a motion to approve the amended resolutions as presented during the second reading by Director Dillard.
Second.
Discussion? Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Now
Any
your
opposed?
motion.
Okay, done. Thank you for reminding me, Sylvia.
Yeah.
All right, moving into,
Now we need a motion to approve it, because we
so-
just approved the second reading. Now we need a motion to approve her
all right, why don't-
changes to the
why don't you
resolution.
bring it up?
Killing me, I swear to God, you're killing me.
Hey, we
Okay.
got a parliamentarian in the
Yeah, say it
audience.
real quick, let's. The motion to approve the second reading of the changes in the resolution? To approve, I'm sorry, to
Approve the
approve.
second, yeah.
To approve the changes.
For the second reading.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, please say no.
No.
I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay. So for the record, we've approved the changes that were brought up earlier in those resolutions as a second reading. Good, thank you. All right, finally, we can get into appointments. Let me read them off real quick, and I'll ask the board's indulgence to consider taking all of the appointments in a single vote. Is there any concern with that? Okay, thank you. So Gary Miller as Chair of the Clubs Committee, Ann Shockley, second term ARC, James Spada, third term Environmental and Natural Assets, Karen Krun-Detter, first term Environment and Natural Assets, Sharon Santa Croce, first term Environment and Natural Assets, Marty Clark, second term Environment and Natural Assets, Herbert Rowe, second term Clubs Committee, Paul Rogers, first term Environment and Natural Assets, Joey Pina, first term Recreation and Parks. I'll accept a motion to accept all of those appointments.
Motion to accept.
All right.
Second.
Any question about any one of them? Okay. All those in favor of the appointments as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.